The blood trail led straight to her porch, dark drops glistening in the moonlight like breadcrumbs of violence. Clara Whitfield stood frozen in her doorway, shotgun trembling in her weathered hand, staring at the wounded stranger slumped against her fence post. After 20 years of solitude, fate had delivered danger and desire to her doorstep in the form of a bleeding cowboy with eyes that promised both salvation and ruin. Welcome to a story of forbidden love blooming in the harsh Arizona desert of 1887. Stay with me until the very end, and don't forget to comment your city below. I'd love to know how far this tale has traveled. The November wind howled across the Arizona desert like a wounded animal, carrying with it the bitter taste of winter's approach. Clara Whitfield sat alone in her kitchen, the kerosene lamp casting long shadows across the rough wooden table where she mended a torn shirt, the same ritual she'd performed for 20 years since Thomas died. Her fingers, once soft and delicate, now bore the calluses of a woman who'd learned to survive alone in a land that showed no mercy to the weak. At 58, Clara had made peace with her solitude, or so she told herself every morning when she woke to an empty bed every evening, when she ate supper in silence every night, when the coyotes sang their lonely songs to the stars. The ranch sprawled around her like a kingdom of dust and determination, 300 acres of stubborn land that demanded everything and gave back just enough to keep her alive. She paused in her sewing, holding the needle up to the light. Her eyes weren't what they used to be. Nothing was what it used to be. The mirror in her bedroom, when she dared to look, showed a woman carved by time and loss. Silver threads through hair that had once been honey gold lines etched around eyes that had shed too many tears. Hands that had buried a husband and 2 stillborn children in the unforgiving earth. The clock on the mantel struck 11. Time for bed. Time to lie alone in the darkness and pretend she didn't ache for the warmth of another body beside her, for the simple comfort of a voice that wasn't her own. She'd stopped praying years ago. What was the point when God seemed to have forgotten this corner of the world? That's when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Slow. Unsteady. Wrong. Clara's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Nobody came out here at night. Nobody came out here at all, except for Jake Morrison once a month with supplies from town, and that was always on Tuesday mornings. This was Saturday night, and those hoofbeats sounded like trouble. She moved with practiced silence to the wooden chest by the door, lifting out Thomas's old shotgun. The metal was cold and familiar in her hands. She'd used it more times than she cared to count. Coyotes. Rattlesnakes. Once a group of bandits who'd thought a widow alone would be easy prey. They'd learned different when she put buckshot through their leader's shoulder. The hoofbeats stopped. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs as she peered through the small window beside the door. The moon hung full and bright, turning the desert into a landscape of silver and shadow. She could see her fence line, the water trough, the old mesquite tree that Thomas had wanted to cut down but she'd insisted on keeping, and their movement by the gate. A horse rider slumped forward in the saddle as she watched the figure slowly, painfully dismounted. Or tried to. Halfway down, his strength failed, and he crumpled to the ground with a sound she heard even through the walls. Clara waited. Watched. The figure didn't move. Leave him, the voice of 20 years' worth of survival whispered. Nothing good comes calling after dark. But then the man lifted his head and the moonlight caught his face. Young, maybe 30, 35 at most. Dark hair matted with what looked like blood. And his eyes. Even from this distance, she could see them searching, desperate, finding her window and holding her gaze with an intensity that made her breath catch. Please, he called out, his voice rough as sandpaper. I mean no harm. I'm hurt. Just need some water. Clara's finger found the trigger. You alone? Yes, ma'am. He tried to stand, made it to his knees. I swear it. What happened to you? Rather not say if it's all the same. A bitter laugh that turned into a cough. But I'm not running from the law if that's what you're asking. Clara had lived long enough to know a lie when she heard one. This man was running from something that was certain. But there was something in his voice, not just pain, but a bone-deep exhaustion that she recognized. The sound of someone who'd been fighting too long and was ready to stop. You armed? She called. Pistol. In my holster. I'll throw it away if you want. Do it. Slow. She watched him reach with trembling fingers for the gun at his hip, toss it weakly into the dust several feet away. The effort seemed to drain what little strength he had left, and he sank back to the ground. Clara stood at the door for a long moment, shotgun heavy in her hands. 20 years she'd protected herself, kept the world at bay. 20 years of being smart, being careful, being alone. But something about this night felt different. Something about this stranger bleeding in her yard pulled at parts of her she'd thought were dead and buried with Thomas. "Damn fool, woman," she muttered to herself and unbolted the door. The desert air hit her face sharp and clean. She kept the shotgun raised as she approached boots crunching on the hard-packed earth. Up close she could see the blood better, a dark stain spreading across the left side of his shirt, another cut along his temple. His horse stood nearby sides, heaving foam at its mouth from being ridden hard. "What's your name?" she asked. "Luke." His eyes found hers again, and Lord help her, they were the deepest brown she'd ever seen, like good coffee or rich earth after rain. "Luke Carver." "Well, Luke Carver, you picked a hell of a place to collapse." "Didn't exactly pick it," he grimaced. "Saw your light. Only light for miles." Clara studied him. His clothes, though torn and bloody, were well made. His boots were quality leather. His hands, she noticed, bore calluses in all the right places for a working man, not a gunslinger. But there was something else, too. Scars on his knuckles, an old bullet wound on his shoulder, just visible through the tear in his shirt. "Can you walk?" "I can try." She sighed, already knowing she was making a mistake. "Come on, then. Lean on me." She helped him to his feet. Surprised by how tall he was, she barely came up to his shoulder. His weight against her was solid and warm, and she tried to ignore the way her body responded to the contact. It had been so long since she'd touched another person, let alone a man. They made their slow way to the house, Luke's breathing harsh in her ear. She could smell him blood and sweat and leather, but underneath that something distinctly masculine that made her stomach flutter in a way she thought she was too old to feel. Inside, she guided him to a chair near the fire, then lit more lamps until the room bloomed with warm light. Now she could see him properly, and what she saw made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He was handsome, not in a pretty way, but in a way that spoke of hard living and harder choices. His jaw was strong beneath several days' worth of stubble. His hair, where it wasn't matted with blood, was thick and dark, with just a touch of silver at the temples. Those brown eyes watched her with an intelligence that made her self-conscious about her worn dress, her work-roughened hands, the gray in her own hair. "The shirt needs to come off." She said, her voice steadier than her hands. "Yes, ma'am." She helped him remove the blood-soaked garment, trying to maintain a clinical detachment as his chest was revealed. But Lord, it had been so long since she'd seen a man's bare skin, the play of muscle and sinew, the pattern of dark hair across his chest. More scars, too. This man had lived a violent life. The wound was a deep graze along his ribs, still bleeding, but not as bad as she'd feared. "Bullet? Knife." He winced as she probed the edges. "Man had a disagreement with me about a poker game. And where is this man now? Rethinking his life choices, I expect." There was something dark in his smile that should have frightened her, but didn't. Clara fetched her medical supplies accumulated over years of tending to her own injuries and those of her animals. As she cleaned the wound, she was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, her fingers on his skin, his breath stirring her hair when she leaned close, the way his muscles tensed and relaxed under her touch. "You're good at this," he said. "Had practice." She didn't elaborate, didn't tell him about the night she'd stitched up Thomas after bar fights, or the times she'd tended her own wounds when there was no one else to do it. "You live out here alone." The question made her stiffen. "That's none of your concern." "Sorry, didn't mean to pry." He was quiet for a moment, then, "It's just, this is a hard place for anyone alone. I manage." "I can see that." There was admiration in his voice that warmed her more than it should have. She finished cleaning the wound and began to bandage it, wrapping the cloth around his torso. This required her to reach around him, bringing them close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Her hands shook slightly, and she cursed herself for acting like a schoolgirl. "There," she said, stepping back quickly. "That should hold if you don't do anything stupid." Too late for that advice, I think. He smiled and it transformed his face, making him look younger, less dangerous. Clara busied herself putting away the medical supplies, trying to ignore the way her skin felt too tight, too warm. You can sleep in the barn. There's clean hay and the barn's fine. More than fine. I'm grateful. She risked a look at him. He was watching her with those dark eyes, and there was something in his gaze that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in 20 years. Not just seen, appreciated, desired even. How old are you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. 36. You... Heat flooded her cheeks, old enough to know better than to let strangers in my house. But you did anyway. Moment of weakness. Or strength. He stood slowly testing his balance. Takes a strong woman to show mercy in a place like this. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Led him out to the barn in silence, showed him where he could bed down. His horse was already there. She'd let it in while he rested, given it water and feed. The animal nickered softly at their approach. Good horse, she said. Ace. Had him 8 years now. He saved my life more than once. And now I have, apparently. He turned to her, and the moonlight through the barn door caught his face just right, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. Yes, you have, and I won't forget it. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition maybe, or a promise. Clara felt it like electricity in the air before a storm. She stepped back, breaking the spell. Rest. I'll check on you in the morning. Clara, that is your name, isn't it? I heard Jake Morrison mention you in town. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Thank you, Clara, truly. The way he said her name, soft and respectful, but with an undercurrent of something else, made her shiver. She left quickly, almost running back to the house, bolting the door behind her as if she could lock out the feelings he'd awakened. But as she lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, she knew it was too late for that. Luke Carver had ridden into her life trailing blood and danger, and somehow she knew nothing would ever be the same. She could still feel the warmth of his skin under her fingers, could still smell him on her hands, could still see those brown eyes looking at her like she was something worth looking at, not just a dried-up widow waiting to die alone. Foolish, she told herself. He's young enough to be, well, not your son, but close. He'll be gone as soon as he's healed. But her traitorous heart whispered back, what if he stays? The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. Claire had barely slept, tossing and turning, alternating between worry that Luke had died in the night and other thoughts she refused to acknowledge. She dressed with more care than usual, then cursed herself for it, pinned her hair up properly instead of just pulling it back, even dabbed a bit of rose water behind her ears, the last of the bottle Thomas had given her for their anniversary 21 years ago. Ridiculous old woman, she muttered to her reflection, but she didn't change anything. The morning was cold frost glittering on the desert plants. She carried a tray with coffee biscuits and bacon, telling herself she was just being hospitable. Nothing more. Luke was awake, sitting up in the hay with his back against a post. He'd put his shirt back on, though she could see the bulk of the bandages underneath. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that did dangerous things to her composure. Morning, I was starting to think I'd dreamed you. Nightmares more likely, she said, setting down the tray. No, his voice was serious. Not nightmares. She didn't know what to do with the intensity in his gaze, so she focused on pouring coffee. How are you feeling? Like I got stabbed and then saved by an angel. Blasphemy before breakfast. You must be feeling better. He laughed, then winced, hand going to his ribs. Worth it to see you smile. She hadn't realized she was smiling. Quickly schooled her expression. Eat. You need your strength if you're going to be moving on. About that. He picked up a biscuit, studied it. My horse needs rest. At least a day or two. I can work for my keep. I'm good with my hands. Claire's mind went places it shouldn't at that statement. I don't need help. That fence post by the gate says different, and the loose boards on your porch, and that stack of wood that needs splitting. You've been observing quite a bit for a half-dead man. I'm observant when it matters. He took a bite of biscuit, closed his eyes in apparent bliss. Lord, when's the last time you had a real meal? I eat fine. I meant a meal someone else cooked for you. The question hit unexpectedly deep, 20 years, give or take. His eyes opened, found hers. That's too long. That's life. Doesn't have to be. The weight of his gaze was too much. She stood abruptly. I have work to do. You rest. Maybe tomorrow you can help with the fence. Clara. She stopped at the barn door but didn't turn around. I meant what I said. I won't forget your kindness. Just don't die in my barn. I don't need the trouble. She heard his soft laugh as she left. Back in the house, she leaned against the closed door and tried to calm her racing heart. What was wrong with her? She was acting like she'd never seen a man before, like she was some young girl instead of a woman old enough to know better. But as she went about her morning chores, she found herself glancing toward the barn repeatedly. And when Luke emerged around noon, moving carefully but determinedly toward the woodpile, she didn't stop him. She watched from the kitchen window as he removed his shirt, wrapped his hands, and began to split wood. The bandage around his ribs was spotted with blood. He'd reopened the wound, but he didn't stop. His body moved with practiced efficiency, the axe rising and falling in a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. Clara told herself she was just making sure he didn't collapse. That's why she couldn't look away from the play of muscles across his back, the way the sun caught the sweat on his skin, the controlled power in every movement. When he finally stopped leaning on the axe handle and breathing hard, she was there with water before she'd made the conscious decision to move. You're an idiot, she said, handing him the cup. Been called worse. He drained the water, and she tried not to watch the movement of his throat as he swallowed. But that should keep you warm for a few nights. I didn't ask you to. I know. He wiped his face with his arm. You don't ask for anything. Don't accept help. Don't let anyone close enough to offer it. You don't know me. I know enough. His eyes held hers. I know you're tough as leather and twice as stubborn. I know you've been hurt bad enough that alone seems safer than the alternative. I know you look at me and see trouble you don't need. Then why don't you leave? Because I also know you looked at me last night and saw something else too. Heat flooded her cheeks. You're imagining things. Am I? He stepped closer, and she should have stepped back, but didn't. This close she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, could count the drops of sweat on his chest, could smell the honest scent of hard work and male skin. You're young enough to be... I'm a grown man, Clara, and you're a beautiful woman. I'm old. You're experienced. I'm set in my ways. You're exactly what you need to be. Each response came faster, closer, until there was barely a breath of space between them. Clara's heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. You'll leave as soon as you're healed. Maybe. I don't need complications. Neither do I. But neither of them moved away. They stood frozen in the moment, balanced on the edge of something that felt both inevitable and impossible. Then Luke swayed slightly, hand going to his ribs, and the spell broke. Clara stepped back, steadying him with hands that wanted to do more than just support. You've torn your wound open, you damn fool. Come on. She led him back to the house, scolding him the whole way, but her hands were gentle as she rewrapped the bandage. This time she forced herself to maintain distance, to not lean in when he breathed her name, to not meet his eyes when he watched her work. There. Try not to undo my work again. Yes, ma'am. But his smile said he'd do exactly as he pleased, and heaven help her she liked that about him. The day passed in a strange dance of approach and retreat. Luke insisted on helping with chores despite his injury, fixing the fence post, mending the porch boards, even helping her feed the chickens and gather eggs. They worked in companionable silence mostly, but sometimes she'd catch him watching her with an expression that made her feel like she was standing in full sunlight even in the shade. As evening approached and the desert began to cool, Clara found herself making dinner for two for the first time in 20 years. Nothing fancy, venison stew she'd had simmering all day, fresh bread, preserved peaches from the summer. But when Luke sat across from her at her kitchen table, it felt like a feast. This is good, he said after the first bite. Really good. It's just stew. It's home cooking. Been a long time since I had that. You travel a lot. He nodded, suddenly focused on his bowl. Here and there. Never found a reason to stay put. What about family? His jaw tightened. Had a wife once, a daughter. The past tense told her everything. I'm sorry. Fever took them 5 years ago. Sarah was only 6. Clara's hand moved without her permission, covering his on the table. I lost 2 babies, never got to hold them. He turned his hand palm up, fingers intertwining with hers. I'm sorry. They sat like that for a moment, 2 people who knew loss finding comfort in shared grief. Then Clara pulled her hand away, confused by how right it had felt in his. Tell me about your husband, Luke said softly. Thomas was a good man. Brought me out here from Missouri, promised we'd build something. We did for a while. Then his heart gave out one day while he was plowing. I found him face down in the dirt, already cold. And you stayed? Where else would I go? This is my land, my home. Thomas is buried out back under the oak tree next to the babies. I'll join them someday. That's a lonely way to look at life. It's realistic. It's sad. She bristled. I don't need your pity. It's not pity. His eyes were serious. It's recognition. I've been doing the same thing, just moving instead of staying still. Running from the ghosts instead of living with them. And which is better? Neither. Both leave you empty. The truth of it sat heavy between them. Clara stood, began clearing the dishes, needing movement to break the intensity of the moment. Let me help, Luke said, rising. You're injured. I'm not an invalid. They worked side by side at the small counter, him washing, her drying. Such a simple domestic scene, but it made Clara's chest ache with longing for what she'd lost, what she'd never have again. Or could she? The thought was dangerous. This man was passing through nothing more. He was young, vital, with years ahead of him. She was old, worn down, with more years behind than ahead. Whatever this tension was between them, it was just proximity and loneliness, nothing more. But when he handed her a plate and their fingers brushed the jolt of electricity, argued otherwise. I should check your bandage again, she said, voice not quite steady. It's fine. Let me see. He sighed but lifted his shirt. The bandage was spotted with blood but not soaked through. She gently probed the edges, checking for signs of infection. Her fingers lingered perhaps longer than necessary on the warm skin of his stomach. Clara. The way he said her name, low and rough, made her look up. His eyes were dark and tense, filled with a hunger that matched her own. We shouldn't, she whispered. I know. You're leaving. I know. This would be a mistake. I know. But he was leaning closer and she wasn't pulling away. His hand came up to cup her cheek thumb, brushing across her cheekbone with a gentleness that made her eyes burn with sudden tears. When's the last time someone touched you like you were precious? He asked. She couldn't answer, couldn't remember. You deserve to be touched like that, to be seen, to be wanted. I'm too old. You're perfect. The kiss was inevitable, soft at first, almost hesitant, as if both were afraid the other would pull away. Then Clara made a small sound, part surprise, part surrender, and Luke deepened the kiss, his other hand coming up to frame her face. Clara had forgotten this. The heat, the need, the way a kiss could make the whole world narrow down to 2 people and the space between them. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, even as her mind screamed warnings. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I should go to the barn, Luke said, but he didn't move. Yes. Clara, please. She stepped back, arms wrapped around herself. Just, please. He nodded, understanding in his eyes, gathered his things and left without another word. Clara stood in her empty kitchen, fingers pressed to her lips, tasting him still. What had she done? What was she doing? She cleaned the kitchen with mechanical precision, trying to scrub away the feeling of his hands on her face, his mouth on hers. But it was useless. 20 years of careful control of accepted loneliness had crumbled with one kiss. That night she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, body alive with feelings she'd thought were dead. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luke's face, felt his touch, heard the way he said her name like a prayer. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. Not because he might hurt her physically, but because he made her want things she'd given up on. Made her remember she was a woman, not just a survivor. made her dream of possibilities that shouldn't exist. But when she finally slept, she dreamed of brown eyes and gentle hands, of being held like she was precious, of being young again, not in years, but in hope. The next morning brought clouds unusual for November, and the smell of rain on the wind. Clara dressed quickly, practically telling herself she wasn't disappointed when Luke didn't appear for breakfast. He was probably being sensible, keeping distance after last night's mistake. But when she entered the barn with his breakfast tray, she found him dressed and saddling his horse. "You're leaving." He turned and she saw the regret in his eyes. "I think it's best. Your wound will heal." She set down the tray with careful control, though her hands shook slightly. "Of course, you're right." "Clarice, no, you're right. Last night we got carried away. It happens. Loneliness makes people do foolish things." "Is that what you think it was, loneliness?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "What else could it be?" He crossed to her in 2 strides, backing her against the barn wall. "You know damn well what else it could be." "Luke, I've been dead inside for 5 years, Clara. Dead and walking. Then I ride up to your place and you look at me with those green eyes full of fire and steel, and suddenly I remember what it feels like to be alive. You're romanticizing. I'm just a lonely widow who... You're the strongest woman I've ever met. You're beautiful and capable and so damn stubborn it makes me want to shake you and kiss you in equal measure. This is insane. You don't know me. Then let me know you. Why? Because for the first time in 5 years, I want to stay somewhere instead of run." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Clara felt tears threaten. When was the last time she'd cried? When Thomas died. When the second baby stopped moving inside her. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't open myself up again just to lose. What if you don't lose? Everyone leaves, one way or another. So you just, what? Close yourself off, die slowly instead of living. It's safer. It's cowardice." The word hit like a slap. "How dare you?" "I dare because I've been doing the same thing, running instead of standing still, but it's the same. We're both so scared of being hurt again that we've stopped living. And what would you have me do, pin my hopes on a drifter who showed up bleeding on my doorstep? No, I'd have you take a chance on a man who looks at you and sees everything he thought he'd never find again." Clara's defenses crumbled. The tears came, then 20 years worth, it seemed. Luke gathered her against him, careful of his wounded side, and held her while she sobbed into his shirt. "I'm scared," she admitted when she could speak again. "So am I. What if... We'll figure it out." She pulled back to look at him. "Stay. Just stay a few days. We can see... Are you sure?" Instead of answering with words, she kissed him. This time there was no hesitation, no holding back. This kiss was a claiming, a promise, a leap of faith all at once. When it ended, Luke was smiling. "I'll unsaddle Ace. I'll make fresh coffee. Clara." She turned at the barn door. "We're going to figure this out." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and fled to the house. Her lips still tingled from the kiss, her body still hummed from being held. She felt alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. As she made coffee with hands that shook only slightly, she watched through the window as Luke tended his horse, talking to the animal in low tones she couldn't hear. The morning light caught his profile, highlighting the strength in his features, the capable way he moved despite his injury. "What am I doing?" she asked herself for the 100th time. But she knew the answer. She was choosing to live instead of just survive. For however long it lasted, whatever came next, she was choosing to open her heart again. Luke entered the kitchen just as the coffee finished brewing. He'd washed up, combed his hair, made an effort. It touched her that he would do that he cared enough to try. "Smells good," he said, taking the seat across from her. "Just coffee." "I meant the company." She laughed despite herself. "That's terrible." "Made you laugh, though." And he had. When was the last time she'd laughed? Really laughed, not just a bitter chuckle at the ironies of life. They spent the morning working together, falling into an easy rhythm as if they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Luke fixed things she'd been meaning to get to for months. The sticky door on the chicken coop, the broken slat in the garden fence, the loose handle on the water pump. Clara found herself stealing glances at him, memorizing the way he moved the concentration on his face when he worked the small smile when he completed a task. "You're staring," he said, without looking up from the harness he was mending. "I'm supervising." "Feels like staring." "How would you know the difference?" "Because I've been staring at you too." The admission hung in the air between them. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks like she was a girl again experiencing her first crush. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Do what?" "Whatever this is. I was married at 17, widowed at 38. I don't know how to court or whatever people call it." Luke set down the harness, gave her his full attention. "We don't have to call it anything. We can just be two people getting to know each other." "Is that what we're doing?" "Among other things." The weight of his gaze made her shiver. There was desire there, yes, but also something deeper, a recognition maybe of kindred spirits who'd found each other against all odds. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as they worked side by side in the garden, pulling the last of the withered tomato plants and preparing the soil for winter. Clara found herself hyper-aware of Luke's presence, the way he favored his wounded side slightly, the sheen of sweat on his forearms, the quiet humming under his breath as he worked. It was a melody she didn't recognize, something mournful and sweet. "What's that song?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence. He looked up, seeming surprised. "Oh, something Sarah used to sing. My daughter. She made it up, I think. Called it her Sunshine Song." The grief in his voice was still raw even after 5 years. Clara understood that particular pain the way loss could ambush you in quiet moments, turning something beautiful into an ache. "Tell me about her." Luke's hand stilled on the rake he was holding. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "She had her mother's red hair, but my stubbornness. Lord, that child could argue the sun out of the sky if she set her mind to it. Smart as a whip, too. Was already reading by the time she was 4. She sounds wonderful." She was. He resumed raking, but his movements were mechanical now. "The fever came through our town fast. Mary got sick first, my wife. I thought Sarah might be spared, she seemed so strong. But children—" He trailed off, shaking his head. Clara moved closer, not touching, but offering her presence. "How long were you married?" 7 years, met Mary at a barn dance in Kansas. She was 17, I was 22. Her father didn't approve, said I was too wild, too unsettled. Maybe he was right. But she married you anyway." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She said I made her laugh, said that was worth more than a settled man who'd bore her to death." Sounds like a wise woman. She was. God, she was. He turned to look at Clara then, and his eyes held a confusion of emotions. "I loved her. Want you to know that. What I felt for her was real." "I know. But Clara—" He stepped closer and her heart rate picked up. "What I'm feeling now with you, it's not less than that. It's different, maybe deeper, because we both know what loss is. We know how precious and fragile this all is." She wanted to step back to maintain the safe distance she'd kept for 20 years. Instead, she found herself swaying toward him like a plant toward sunlight. "Luke, we've known each other 3 days. And how long does it take? How long before you know something's right?" "I don't know if anything's right anymore." "Then maybe we stop worrying about right and wrong and just be." The simplicity of it was both terrifying and liberating. Clara had spent so long calculating every decision, measuring every risk, protecting herself from any possibility of pain. But what had that gotten her, except a half-life existing, but not living? "I need time," she said finally. "To think, to understand what this is." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But even as he said it, they both heard the uncertainty. Men like Luke didn't stay. They moved with the seasons, the work, the wind. And women like Clara had roots too deep to pull up. That evening, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, they prepared dinner together in a dance of domestic intimacy that felt both foreign and familiar. Luke knew his way around a kitchen, another surprise. He prepared the venison while Clara made biscuits, their movements synchronized without need for words. "Where'd you learn to cook?" she asked as he seasoned the meat with practiced ease. "Trail drives mostly. Cookie. That's what we called the cook. He took a liking to me when I was just 15, taught me that a good meal could make the difference between a crew that'd follow you to hell and one that'd leave you at the first sign of trouble. Were you on many drives? More than I can count. Before Mary, that was my life. Texas to Kansas. Kansas to Montana. Months in the saddle, sleeping under stars, fighting off rustlers and storms and boredom. You miss it. He considered while he worked. I missed the simplicity of it. You knew what each day would bring, more or less. Keep the cattle moving, keep them calm, get them to market. Everything else could wait. And after Mary and Sarah died, I couldn't stay still. Tried to go back to the drives, but it wasn't the same. Nothing was the same, so I drifted. Poker games, odd jobs, whatever kept me moving. Running? Clara said softly. Yeah, running. He looked at her across the kitchen. Until now. The weight of that statement settled over them. Clara focused on rolling out the biscuit dough, but her hands trembled slightly. This was moving too fast, feeling too much. She'd built walls for a reason, and this man was taking them apart brick by brick with his sad eyes and gentle hands and the way he said her name. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and they both looked toward the window. The sky had turned an ominous green-gray, and the wind was picking up. Storm coming, Luke said. We need to get the animals secured. They worked quickly, efficiently, driving the chickens into their coop, checking that the barn doors were fastened tight. Luke's horse Ace was restless, sensing the approaching weather. Luke spoke to him in low, calming tones, stroking his neck until the animal settled. The first fat raindrops were falling as they ran back to the house. By the time they got inside, it had become a downpour. Clara lit more lamps as the sky darkened to near night, though it was barely past 6. It's been months since we had rain like this, she said, watching the water stream down the windows. The land needs it. Everything needs it. She turned from the window to find him watching her with that intensity that made her stomach flutter. What? You're beautiful in lamplight. Stop. Why? It's true. I'm not. You are. He crossed to her, stopped just close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Your hair catches the light like copper. Your eyes go from green to gold depending on your mood. You have a mouth that makes a man think improper thoughts. Luke. And when you blush like that right there on your cheekbones, it makes me want to trace that color with my fingers, my mouth. Stop. But her voice was breathless, unconvincing. Tell me you don't feel it too. She couldn't, because she did feel it, this pull between them that seemed to strengthen with each passing hour. It terrified her, this wanting. She'd forgotten how consuming desire could be, how it could make rational thought dissolve like sugar in rain. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a split second, the hunger in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Thunder followed immediately, so loud it shook the windows. Clara jumped, and suddenly Luke's arms were around her, steady and strong. Just thunder, he murmured against her hair. I'm not scared of storms. What are you scared of? She pulled back enough to look at him. This. You. The way you make me feel. How do I make you feel? Alive, she whispered. Too alive. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones, just as he'd said he wanted to. There's no such thing as too alive, Clara. There's alive, or there's dead, and we've both been dead too long. The kiss was different this time, not gentle or questioning, but demanding. Clara met that demand with her own 20 years of loneliness and longing poured into the connection. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he groaned against her mouth, a sound that sent heat spiraling through her. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Luke's eyes were dark pupils blown wide, and Clara knew hers must look the same. Clara, Another crack of thunder, and the lamp nearest them flickered and went out. Then another. Within seconds they were in near darkness, only the occasional flash of lightning providing illumination. I should light more lamps, Clara said, but she didn't move from his arms. Should you? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of all the reasons this was a mistake, his youth, his wandering nature, the inevitable heartbreak waiting at the end. But stronger than all of that was the need coursing through her veins, the ache to be touched, to be held, to be desired. I'm not a loose woman, she said. which seemed an absurd thing to say under the circumstances. I know. I've only been with my husband. I know. I don't know if I remember how. He silenced her with another kiss, softer this time. It's like dancing. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. And Lord help her, he was right. Her body did remember the heat, the need, the sweet ache of anticipation. When his lips moved to her neck, she gasped, hands clutching at his shoulders. When his hands skimmed her waist, she pressed closer, seeking more contact. Not here, she managed to say. My room. He pulled back, searching her face in the dim light. Are you sure? Was she no? But she was tired of being careful, tired of being alone, tired of feeling nothing. Yes. He kissed her again, deep and thorough, then let her lead him through the dark house to her bedroom. She'd barely been able to let him in her kitchen, and now she was bringing him to the room she'd shared with Thomas, to the bed where she'd lain alone for 20 years. Lightning illuminated the space, the simple iron bedstead, the handmade quilt, the photograph of Thomas on the dresser. Luke followed her gaze to the picture. We can stop, he said. If this isn't... She turned the photograph face down. He's been gone a long time, and I think he'd understand. He loved me. He'd want me to be happy. Are you happy? I don't know, but I'm something. After 20 years of nothing, something feels like everything. The rain pounded against the windows as they came together again, hands relearning the geography of desire. Luke was patient, so patient, treating her like she might break even as his own need was evident in the tension of his body, the catch in his breath. You're shaking, he murmured against her throat. I'm scared. Of me. Of feeling this much. He pulled back to look at her, and in a flash of lightning she saw the understanding in his eyes. We can stop. If we stop now, I might never start again. Clara, she silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her fear and need and desperate hope into it. Thunder crashed overhead, and the storm outside seemed to echo the storm within her wild, uncontrolled necessary. What followed was a rediscovery. Not of youth that was gone forever, but of something deeper. The beauty of two people who knew loss, finding comfort in each other. The sweetness of desire tempered by experience. The profound intimacy of being truly seen and wanted, not despite age and scars and grief, but because of them. Luke touched her like she was precious, just as he'd promised. His hands and mouth worshipped her body that she'd thought was past deserving worship. When she tried to hide, embarrassed by the marks time had left, he kissed each one and called them beautiful, called her beautiful, until she almost believed it. And when they finally came together, it wasn't with the fumbling eagerness of youth, but with the deep appreciation of those who knew how rare and precious such connection was. Clara gasped at the feeling, not just the physical sensation, though, that was overwhelming after so long, but the emotional weight of it, of being joined with another person, of not being alone in her skin. Look at me, Luke whispered, and she opened eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed. His face above her was intense, almost reverent. You're incredible. She wanted to argue, to deflect, but the words died in her throat as sensation built. It had been so long she'd forgotten this. The climbing tension, the sweet ache, the moment when everything hung suspended before the fall. When it came, she cried out, clutching at him, and felt tears on her cheeks, though she wasn't sad. Luke followed her over her name on his lips like a prayer, and then collapsed carefully beside her, pulling her against him. They lay in silence, except for their gradually slowing breaths, and the storm still raging outside. Clara felt exposed, vulnerable, more naked than the mere absence of clothes could account for. She'd let him in past all her defenses, and now there was no going back. You're thinking too loud, Luke murmured, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. How do you know I'm thinking? You go all tense, like you're ready to run even lying still. It unnerved her how well he read her after such a short time. I don't know how to do this. Do what, oui? Whatever comes after. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe we don't have to know. Maybe we just take it moment by moment. I'm not good at uncertainty. I've noticed. There was gentle humor in his voice. You want to plan everything, control everything, but life doesn't work that way. It has for 20 years. Has it? Or have you just been existing in the illusion of control? The question stung because it was true. She'd thought she was managing her life, but really she'd just been avoiding it. What do you want from me, Luke? He turned her to face him, and even in the darkness, she could feel the intensity of his gaze. Everything. Nothing. Whatever you're willing to give. I want to wake up next to you tomorrow. I want to fix your roof and mend your fences and make you laugh. I want to see you in sunlight and starlight and every light in between. For how long? For as long as you'll have me. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She wanted more promises, certainties, guarantees. But hadn't she learned by now that such things were illusions Thomas had promised her forever, and forever had lasted 18 years? The babies she'd carried had been supposed to outlive her, and they hadn't lived at all. Stay tonight, she said finally. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. He kissed her softly. That's all I'm asking. The storm raged on, but inside Clara's small room there was warmth and quiet. She lay in Luke's arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back, his breath stirring her hair. It felt strange to share her bed after so long alone, but also right in a way that scared her. She thought he was asleep when he spoke again. Tell me about the babies. The question should have hurt, but somehow in the darkness and the afterglow of intimacy, it felt like a gift to be asked. The first was a boy, perfect in every way except he never drew breath. The second was a girl. She came too early, too small, lived for an hour. Did you name them? Thomas Jr. and Rose. They're buried next to Thomas under the oak tree. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, she agreed. It doesn't. He was quiet then. Sarah would have loved it here. All the space to run the animals. She always wanted a horse. Why didn't you get her one? We lived in town, no place to keep it. I always said someday when we had land. He laughed bitterly. Someday never came. Clara turned in his arms, found his face in the darkness. You can't live on regrets. Says the woman who's been doing exactly that for 20 years. Maybe that's why I know it doesn't work. They fell asleep like that, facing each other, legs tangled, the storm finally quieting to a gentle rain. Clara's last thought before sleep took her was that she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this warm, this safe, this complete. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and an empty bed. For a moment she thought she'd dreamed it all, the storm, Luke, the things they'd done in the darkness. Then she saw the indication in the pillow beside her, caught his scent on the sheets. Felt the pleasant ache in muscles too long unused. Panic seized her. He'd left. Of course he'd left. What man would stay with a worn-out widow when he could have someone young and fresh? She'd been a fool to think morning. She gasped, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. Luke stood in the doorway, fully dressed, carrying a tray with coffee and what looked like breakfast. I thought you'd gone, she admitted. His face softened. Just went to take care of the animals and make you breakfast. Though I have to admit your chickens don't much like me. They don't like anyone. Smart birds. He set the tray on the bedside table, then sat on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? How was she feeling? Confused, exposed, alive, terrified, hopeful, too many things to name. I don't know. That's honest. Luke last night was perfect. Was probably a mistake. Why? Because now I know what I'm missing. Before I could pretend I didn't need that. Now you know you do need it. Need connection, need touch, need another person. But you'll leave. It wasn't a question. Will I? Men like you don't stay. You drift with the wind, follow the work, chase the horizon. Maybe I'm tired of chasing. Maybe I found something worth stopping for. You can't know that after 3 days. Can I? He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Clara, I've been a lot of places, known a lot of people, but I've never met anyone like you. A dried-up old widow. A strong, beautiful, capable woman who makes me want to be better than I am. Who makes me want to plant roots instead of tumbleweeds. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe. But 20 years of hard-learned caution held her back. Words are easy. Then let me show you with actions. Give me time to prove it. How much time? As much as you need. She studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but found only sincerity. Still, trust didn't come easy after so long. I need to get up. There's work to do. Clarity. Please. I need some space to think. He nodded, stood. I'll be outside if you need me. After he left, Clara dressed slowly, her body reminding her with every movement of what they'd done. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and stopped, startled. She looked different, not younger exactly, but softer somehow, less brittle. Her lips were slightly swollen from kisses. Her skin had a glow it hadn't had in years. Foolish woman, she told her reflection, but there was no real heat in it. Outside, she found Luke had already done half her morning chores. The chickens were fed eggs, gathered Ace and her old mare Buttercup turned out to the small pasture. He was working on repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in the storm, his movements careful but steady despite his injury. You should be resting, she called. I've rested enough. Besides, work helps me think. What are you thinking about? He straightened, looked at her across the yard. You, us. Whether there could be an us. Luke, I know you're scared. I know you think I'll leave. But Clara, what if I don't? What if this is exactly where I'm supposed to be? She wanted to ask how he could know that, how anyone could know anything for certain. But before she could speak, they heard horses approaching. Multiple horses moving fast. Luke's entire demeanor changed. His hand went to his hip where his gun would normally be found. Nothing. It was still somewhere in the dirt where he'd thrown it that first night. His face went hard dangerous. Get inside, he said. This is my land. Clara, please. Get inside and get your shotgun. The urgency in his voice moved her. She ran to the house, grabbed Thomas's shotgun from its place by the door. Through the window, she saw 4 men ride up, spreading out in a semicircle that trapped Luke against the fence. She couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Luke's hands rise slowly, saw one of the men dismount and approach him. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in Luke's body coiled like a spring ready to snap. The man who'd dismounted was tall, lean, with a badge glinting on his chest. A marshal. Clara's blood ran cold. Luke had said he wasn't running from the law, but clearly the law was running after him. She stepped onto the porch, shotgun visible, but not quite aimed. Can I help you, gentlemen? All eyes turned to her. The marshal touched his hat. Ma'am, Marshal John Briggs, we're looking for Luke Carver. Why, that's between us and him, ma'am. This is my land. That makes it my business. The marshal's eyes narrowed. You know this man? He works for me. That's so. How long has he been working for you? Luke spoke before she could answer. It's all right, Clara. These men and I have some history to discuss. What kind of history? The marshal smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. The kind that involves a bank in Tucson and $3,000 that went missing. Clara's heart sank. She'd known Luke was running from something, but she'd hoped. What? That it was something noble, that he was falsely accused, that her judgment hadn't been so compromised by loneliness and desire. I told you before, Briggs, Luke said, his voice steady. I wasn't part of that robbery. Your partners say different. My former partners would sell their mothers for a reduced sentence. Maybe so, but you were there. I was trying to stop it. Strange place for an innocent man inside a bank with a gun during a robbery. Clara watched this exchange, trying to read the truth in Luke's face. He stood straight, meeting the marshal's eyes without flinching. Either he was telling the truth, or he was a very good liar. Ma'am, the marshal addressed her again. How well do you know this man? Well enough. Do you know he rides with the Colton gang, or did until that bank job went bad? The Colton gang, even Clara, isolated as she was, had heard of them, robbers and killers who'd been terrorizing the territory for years. I left the gang before the robbery, Luke said. Ask anyone in Tucson. I'd been working at the Broken Wheel Ranch for 2 months. Until the day of the robbery, when you just happened to be in town, just happened to be in that bank. I was making a deposit for my employer. Convenient story. It's the truth. The marshal studied him for a long moment. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, you're coming with us. Let a judge sort it out. Do you have a warrant? Clara surprised herself by asking. The marshal's attention shifted to her, and she didn't like the speculation in his eyes. Don't need one if he comes willing. You planning to interfere with the law, ma'am? I'm planning to protect my interests. This man owes me work. If you take him, who's going to fix my roof before winter? It was a weak argument, but it bought time. The marshal looked between her and Luke, and his smile turned knowing. I see. That's how it is. Heat flooded Clara's cheeks, but she kept her chin high. I don't know what you're implying, Marshal. I think you do. Question is, are you really willing to harbor a possible criminal for the sake of roof work? Luke stepped forward. Leave her out of this, Briggs. I'll come with you. No! The word escaped before Clara could stop it. Everyone looked at her. She took a breath, made a decision that would change everything. Marshal, you said the robbery was in Tucson. That's right. When? 6 days ago. Then Mr. Carver couldn't have been involved. That's so. He's been here for the past week, arrived 7 days ago looking for work. He's been fixing my property ever since. The lie came so easily it scared her, but she met the marshal's eyes steadily, daring him to challenge her. You willing to swear to that in court? The marshal asked. If necessary. Perjury's a serious crime, ma'am. So is false arrest. The marshal studied her for a long moment. She could feel Luke's eyes on her too, but she didn't dare look at him. Finally, the marshal sighed. Jim ride to town, telegraph Tucson. Check if anyone at the Broken Wheel can verify Carver's story about the deposit. Tom, you ride back to where we found that blood trail. See if you can determine how old it is. 2 of the men rode off. The marshal and his remaining deputies stayed watching Luke like hawks. Mind if we water our horses while we wait, ma'am? The marshal asked. Help yourselves. The next hour was the longest of Clara's life. She went inside ostensibly to make coffee, but really to calm her racing heart. What had she done? She'd lied to a federal marshal, potentially made herself an accessory to robbery. And for what? A man she'd known 3 days. But even as she questioned herself, she knew why. Because in her gut, she believed Luke. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was her loneliness making decisions for her, but she believed he was telling the truth about the robbery. Through the window, she watched Luke standing relaxed but ready, talking quietly with the marshal. Whatever existed between her and Luke, whatever might come of it, she couldn't let him be railroaded for something she didn't believe he'd done. The riders returned as the sun reached its zenith. Jim, the one who'd gone to town, rode up to the marshal and handed him a telegram. The marshal read it, his face giving nothing away. Well, Luke asked. Ranch owner confirms you were working there. Also confirms you went to town that morning to make a deposit. Bank manager confirms you were there before the robbery made the deposit left. So I'm free to go. Not quite. There's still the matter of your association with known criminals. Association isn't a crime. No, but it makes you someone we keep an eye on. The marshal walked over to Luke, got close enough that Clara could see Luke's jaw tighten. I don't buy it, Carver. Maybe you weren't in on the robbery, but you know something. And this good woman here providing you an alibi. Well, that's interesting too. Leave her alone, Briggs. Or what? The marshal smiled. You'll show your true colors. Give me a reason to take you in after all. Luke's hands clenched into fists, but he kept them at his sides. I left that life behind. I'm trying to build something different here. With the widow? The marshal glanced at Clara, who'd come back onto the porch. She's a bit long in the tooth for you, isn't she? The insult hit its mark. Clara felt her face burn with humiliation. Of course, that's what everyone would think, that she was a desperate old woman taken in by a younger man's attention. Marshal, Luke's voice was deadly quiet. You've done your job. You've verified my story. Now get off this land before I forget I'm trying to be a better man. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. The marshal's hand moved to his gun, but his deputy spoke up. John, we got no cause to be here. Man's story checked out. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then the marshal stepped back, spit in the dust at Luke's feet. This isn't over, Carver. Men like you don't change. Sooner or later, you'll show your true nature, And when you do, I'll be waiting." He mounted his horse, touched his hat mockingly to Clara. "Ma'am, you be careful now. Wolves don't always look like wolves." They rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving Clara and Luke standing in the yard, the space between them suddenly feeling like miles. Luke turned to face her, his expression unreadable in the harsh noon light. The dust from the marshal's departure still hung in the air between them, and Clara felt the weight of what had just happened settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. "You lied for me," he said quietly. "I said you'd been here a week instead of 3 days. Hardly a hanging offense. Clara, you don't understand what you've just done. Briggs won't forget this. He'll be watching you now, too." She lifted her chin, that stubborn pride he'd come to recognize flaring in her green eyes. "Let him watch. I've got nothing to hide. You've got me to hide. Are you something that needs hiding?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "You heard him. I rode with the Colton gang. That's not something a person just walks away from." "But you did." "I tried to, thought I had. But men like that, they have a way of pulling you back in." Clara studied him, seeing new shadows in his eyes, new weight on his shoulders. "Tell me, all of it. I think I've earned that much." Luke nodded slowly. "You have. More than that." He gestured toward the porch. "Might want to sit down. It's not a pretty story." They sat on the porch steps, not touching, but close enough that Clara could feel the tension radiating from him. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, but neither suggested moving to the shade. There was something about the harsh light that demanded truth. "I met Tom Colton when I was 20, Luke began. "Just a kid, really, though I thought I was a man. My father had died, left me with nothing but debts and a talent for cards and guns. Tom saw me win a poker game in Amarillo, said he could use a man with steady hands and a quick draw. And you joined him." "Not at first, but I was hungry, angry at the world, and Tom, he had a way of making you feel like you belonged to something bigger. The gang was like a family," he said. "Brothers who'd die for each other." Clara heard the bitterness in his voice. "But it wasn't—" "Oh, it was. That was the problem. We were family in all the worst ways, jealous, violent, loyal to a fault until we weren't. For 5 years I rode with them. Robbed banks, stages, even a train once. Never killed anyone, though I came close a few times." "What changed?" Luke was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I met Mary. She was working at a boarding house in Wichita. Served me breakfast one morning, and I knew right then I wanted out of that life. Wanted to be the kind of man a woman like her could love." "So you left the gang?" "Tried to. Tom didn't take it well. Said I knew too much, that leaving meant betrayal. We fought physically, I mean. I nearly killed him that day, came so close I scared myself. But I walked away, changed my name for a while, married Mary, tried to build something clean. The marshal said you were working at a ranch. After Mary and Sarah died, I couldn't stay in Kansas. Too many memories. I drifted for a while, then got work at the Broken Wheel. It was good, honest work. I was starting to feel like maybe I could build something again." "Then what happened?" Luke picked up a small stone, turned it over in his fingers. "I went to town to make a deposit for my boss. Walked into that bank, and there they were, 3 members of my old gang, masks down, guns out. Tom wasn't there, but his brother Jesse was. He saw me, smiled like it was Christmas morning. They thought you were there to help, or to stop them. Either way, my presence was a problem. Jesse had his gun on the bank manager's daughter. Girl couldn't have been more than 16, crying and shaking. I knew what he was capable of." Clara's stomach twisted. "What did you do?" "I tried to talk them down. Told them to take the money and go leave the people alone. Jesse laughed, said I'd gone soft. Then he pointed his gun at the girl's head, said he'd paint the walls with her brains if I didn't pick a side. Dear God. I picked a side, pulled the knife from my boot and put it in Jesse's shoulder. He shot me, grazed my ribs, as you know. In the chaos, the others grabbed what money they could and ran. I went after them trying to stop them, but they had horses waiting. Last thing Jesse said was that I'd pay for choosing strangers over family. Clara absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. So you ran. I knew they'd either come after me themselves or send the law after me. Jesse would make sure I was implicated somehow. So yes, I ran. Rode until Ace couldn't go any further, and then I saw your light." They sat in silence, the weight of his past settling between them like a third presence. Clara thought about the man she'd taken into her bed, the violence he'd lived with the choices he'd made. She should be frightened, should send him away. Instead, she found herself understanding him better. The shadows in his eyes, the careful way he moved through the world, the desperate gratitude when she'd shown him kindness. The marshal was right about one thing, she finally said. Wolves don't always look like wolves. Luke flinched. Clara. But sometimes men who've run with wolves learn to be something else. Sometimes they choose to be dogs instead, loyal, protective, domestic. Is that what you think I am, domesticated? I think you're trying to be. The question is whether the wild will call you back. He turned to look at her then, and the raw honesty in his eyes took her breath away. What if I said, "You make me want to forget the wild ever existed"? What if I said this place, "You feel more like home than anywhere I've been"? I'd say you've known me 3 days, and that's not enough time to know anything. My grandmother used to say the heart knows things in an instant that the mind takes years to understand. Your grandmother sounds like she was a romantic. She was a woman who buried 3 husbands and still believed in love. Clara laughed despite herself. Stubborn or foolish? Both, like someone else I know. The insult from the marshal still stung long in the tooth, and Clara found herself asking, "Don't you want someone younger? Someone who can give you children, build a future with you?" Luke set down the stone he'd been holding, turned to face her fully. "You want to know what I want?" "Yes." "I want to wake up next to a woman who knows what loss is and chooses to live anyway. I want someone who won't shatter at the first sign of trouble because she's already been broken and put herself back together. I want hands that know work, eyes that see truth, a spirit that won't be tamed even when it chooses to stay put." That's not an answer about age. Isn't it? You think a 20-year-old girl has those qualities? You think some fresh-faced child who's never buried anyone, never survived alone, never faced down federal marshals could give me what I need? What do you need? You. The word hung between them, simple and complicated all at once. I need you, Clara. Not some idea of you, not some younger version of you. You as you are right now. Clara felt tears threaten, which made her angry. She'd cried more in the past 3 days than in the past 20 years. You can't know that. Then let me learn it. Let me stay and prove it. For how long? For as long as you'll have me. That's what you said last night. And I meant it. She stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the porch. The marshal will come back. Maybe not him specifically, but someone will. Your past isn't done with you, Luke. I know. It's not done with me either now. I've made myself a target by lying for you. I know. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. I want... She trailed off, not sure how to articulate what she wanted. Luke rose, moved to stand behind her close, but not touching. What do you want, Clara? I want to be 28, again, meeting my husband for the first time. I want my babies to have lived. I want Thomas to have had a better heart. I want impossible things. Those aren't the only things you want. She turned to face him. No, I want you to kiss me again. I want to pretend the outside world doesn't exist. I want to be foolish and romantic and believe that this, whatever this is, could work. Then be those things. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. We choose Clara. Every day we choose. I'm choosing you. The question is, what are you choosing? Before she could answer, they heard another horse approaching. Both tensed Luke's hand, going automatically to where his gun should be. But it was just Jake Morrison from town driving his supply wagon. "Afternoon, Clarice," he called out cheerfully. Then his expression changed as he noticed Luke. "Oh, didn't know you had company." "Jake, this is Luke Carver. He's been helping with repairs. Luke Jake brings supplies from town once a month." Jake's eyes narrowed slightly. "Carver, heard that name in town. Marshall was asking about you." "The marshal and I have already spoken," Luke said evenly. "That's so." Jake climbed down from his wagon, but his usual easy manner was gone. "Clara, can I speak with you privately?" She glanced at Luke, who nodded, and walked toward the barn. Jake waited until he was out of earshot, then turned to Clara with concern written all over his weathered face. You know who that man is? I know enough. He rode with the Colton gang Clara, they're killers. He left that life behind. Men like that don't leave nothing behind. It follows them like a shadow. Clara felt her defenses rise. Jake, I appreciate your concern, but it ain't just concern, it's worry. You're out here alone. I've been alone for 20 years. That's different, and you know it. This man brings trouble with him. The whole town's talking about the marshal's visit out here. Already? That was only 2 hours ago. News travels fast when it's interesting. And a widow woman harboring a former outlaw, that's interesting. Heat flooded Clara's cheeks. I'm not harboring anyone. He works for me. Jake's expression was skeptical. That all he does? That's none of your business. Clara, I've known you since Thomas was alive. He asked me to look out for you if anything happened to him. That was 20 years ago, Jake. I don't need looking after. Don't you? You got any idea what people are saying in town? I don't care what they're saying. You should. You need that town, Clara. You need supplies, need to sell your eggs and vegetables. You can't afford to have them turn against you. The truth of it hit her like cold water. She did need the town, couldn't survive entirely isolated. And if they decided she was consorting with outlaws... What are they saying? She asked quietly. Jake looked uncomfortable. That he's taking advantage, that you're lonely enough to be fooled by a younger man's attention. Each word was like a small knife. I see. Clara, I'm not saying it's true, but perception matters. And right now the perception is that you've lost your good sense over a handsome face. He's more than that. Is he? You've known him, what, a few days? Sometimes that's enough. Jake sighed, rubbed his face. Lord, you sound like my daughter when she fell for that traveling salesman. That didn't end well either. This is different. It's always different when it's happening to you. Clara wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the words. How could she explain the connection she felt with Luke? How could she make anyone understand that after 20 years of numbness, she finally felt alive again? I brought your usual supplies, Jake said, changing the subject, plus some extra flour and coffee. Winter's coming early this year, they say. Thank you. They unloaded the wagon in tense silence, Luke reappearing to help without being asked. Jake barely acknowledged him, and the atmosphere was thick with disapproval. When everything was stored away and Jake was preparing to leave, he pulled Clara aside one more time. If you need anything, if there's trouble, you send word. I mean it. I appreciate that, Jake. He glanced at Luke, who was standing by the barn giving them space, but clearly watching. Be careful, Clara. Men like that, they take more than they give. After Jake left, Clara stood in her kitchen staring at the supplies he'd brought. The practical necessities of life, flour, salt, coffee beans, things that would keep her alive through winter. But what was the point of staying alive if you weren't really living? Luke entered quietly. He's not wrong, you know. About what? About me bringing trouble. About taking more than I give. She turned to face him. Are you trying to talk me out of this now? I'm trying to be honest. You defended me till the marshal lied for me. Now the town's talking. Your reputation. My reputation has been that poor widow woman for 20 years. At least now I'm interesting. Claire, this is serious. I know it is. She moved closer to him. But I've been serious my whole life. Seriously married, seriously widowed, seriously alone. Maybe I want to be seriously foolish for once. And when my past catches up, because it will. Men like Jesse Colton don't forget betrayal. Then we'll face it together. The hope in his voice nearly undid her. You're not the only one who can choose Luke. I choose too. And I choose this, whatever this is, for however long it lasts. He pulled her into his arms then, and she went willingly, burying her face against his chest. He smelled of sun and sweat and something uniquely him, and she breathed it in like she'd been suffocating and he was air. I don't deserve you, he murmured against her hair. Probably not, but deserving and wanting aren't the same thing. He pulled back enough to look at her face. What do you want? Right now, I want to forget about marshals and gossip and the past. I want to pretend we're just two people with no history, no complications. And how do we do that? We work, we eat, we talk, we see who we are when the world isn't watching. So that's what they did. They spent the afternoon working side by side, falling into a rhythm that felt both new and ancient. Luke proved to be not just capable, but skilled at repair work, fixing things Clara hadn't even realized were broken. She found herself watching his hands as he worked, remembering how those same hands had touched her in the darkness. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, they sat on the porch with coffee, the comfortable silence between them worth more than words. "Tell me about Missouri," Luke said eventually. "Not much to tell. Green hills, actual trees, water everywhere. Everything Arizona isn't. Do you miss it?" "Sometimes. I miss the green most of all. The way grass felt under bare feet, swimming in the creek on hot days." She smiled at the memory. "My mother had a garden that was like paradise. Roses and honeysuckle and vegetables all mixed together. She said beauty and practicality should always go hand in hand." Sounds nice. It was. Until the war came. Luke waited, not pushing. "I was 12 when it started. By the time it ended, everything was different. My brothers were dead, my father was broken, and the farm was ruined. Thomas offered a new start out west, and I took it." "How old were you?" 17. My parents thought I was too young, but there weren't many options for women after the war. Become a burden on relatives, work in a factory, or marry. Thomas was kind, older, established. It seemed like salvation. Was it? In its way. He was good to me. Patient when I was homesick, gentle when I was scared. We built something here together. Did you love him?" The question should have offended her, but there was no judgment in Luke's voice, only curiosity. "I grew to love him. Not the wild, passionate love of stories, but something steady and safe. We were partners more than lovers by the end." "Is that what you want now, safe and steady?" She turned to look at him. "I thought I did. Then you showed up bleeding on my doorstep and reminded me that safe and steady can also mean half dead." "I'm not safe, Clara." "I know. I can't promise steady either." "I know that too." "Then what are we doing?" "Living. For however long we have, we're living." The sun dipped below the horizon and the temperature immediately began to drop. Desert nights in November were cold and Clara shivered. Without a word, Luke shifted closer, his arm going around her shoulders. She should have pulled away, maintained some distance, but his warmth was too inviting. "The marshal will come back," Luke said quietly. "Maybe not tomorrow or next week, but eventually. And if not him, then Jesse and what's left of the gang. I brought violence to your door, Clara." "Violence was always at my door. This is the frontier. The only difference is now I have someone to face it with." "You're too trusting, and you're too guilt-ridden. We balance each other out." He laughed softly. "Is that what we do? Among other things?" The weight of that statement, the memory of the night before, settled over them like a blanket. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks and was grateful for the darkness. "Are you blushing?" Luke asked, amusement in his voice. "No." "Liar." He turned her face toward him, and even in the dim light from the window, she knew he could see her red cheeks. "You're beautiful when you blush." "Stop." "Why, it's true." "Because I don't know how to do this. The flirting, the compliments, I'm too old for it." "You're not too old for anything." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're just out of practice." 20 years out of practice. Then we'll practice together." The kiss was inevitable, soft and sweet in the darkness. Clara melted into him, letting herself forget everything except the warmth of his mouth, the strength of his arms around her. When they broke apart, she was trembling, but not from cold. "Come to bed," Luke said softly. "Luke, not just for that, though I wouldn't say no. But I want to hold you, want to wake up with you, want to pretend just for tonight that this is our life." The temptation was overwhelming, but Clara forced herself to think practically. "Your wound needs checking, and we need to eat something." Ever practical. Someone has to be. They went inside, and Clara insisted on examining his injury before anything else. The knife wound was healing well. No signs of infection, though the exertion of the day had caused some fresh bleeding. "You need to be more careful," she scolded as she rebandaged it. "Worth it to have your hands on me." "Flirt? Is it working?" She looked up at him, saw the heat in his eyes, the smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe." Only maybe. Definitely maybe. They ate a simple supper, leftover stew, fresh bread, preserved peaches that tasted like summer. The domestic simplicity of it made Clara's chest ache. This was what she'd missed, not just the physical intimacy, but the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with someone, of having another presence in her space. "You're quiet," Luke observed, thinking. About how quickly this has all happened. 4 days ago, I didn't know you existed. Now I can't imagine this house without you in it. Luke reached across the table, took her hand. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. They cleaned up together, moving around each other with increasing familiarity. When the last dish was dried and put away, they stood facing each other in the lamplight, the question of what came next hanging between them. I should check on Ace, Luke said, but he didn't move. I should mend that torn shirt, Clara said, but she didn't move either. Clara, come to bed, she heard herself say. I want what you said, to pretend this is our life. He smiled, then slow and warm. Lead the way. This time there was no storm to hide behind, no darkness to blur the edges. The lamplight revealed everything as they undressed: his wound, her stretch marks, all the maps their bodies had drawn of lives lived hard. But there was no shame in it, only a tender acknowledgement of survival. When Luke traced the silver lines on her belly, the marks left by the babies who never lived, Clara didn't flinch away. Beautiful, he murmured. They're ugly. They're proof of life, of hope, of trying, and failing. Not failing, surviving. He kissed each mark, a benediction that brought tears to her eyes. How had this man, with his violent past and uncertain future, become a source of such tenderness? Their lovemaking was different this time, slower, deeper, with an edge of desperation. Both knew this couldn't last, that the outside world would intrude eventually. But for now, in this bed that had known so much loneliness, they found in each other a temporary salvation. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Luke traced lazy patterns on Clara's bare shoulder. Tell me something nobody else knows. Why? Because I want to know all of you, not just the parts you show the world. Clara considered. Sometimes I talk to Thomas, not as grave, but just to the air. Tell him about my day, ask his advice. It's foolish. It's not foolish. It's human. Do you talk to Mary and Sarah? Every day. His arm tightened around her. I tell Sarah bedtime stories sometimes. She always liked the one about the princess who saved herself. Smart girl. She would have loved you. A woman running a ranch alone, you'd have been her hero. The thought of the child who'd never grow up, who'd never meet her, made Clara's throat tight. I would have loved her too. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. Coyotes in the distance whined through the mesquite, the old house settling around them. Luke, what happens when your past comes calling? He was quiet for a long moment. I face it. Try to keep it from touching you. And if you can't, then we face it together. You make it sound simple. The decision is simple. The execution might be harder. Might be, will be, he admitted. Jesse Colton doesn't forgive. And now that the marshal's sniffing around, it's only a matter of time before one or both of them shows up here. Are you trying to scare me off? I'm trying to prepare you. Clara turned in his arms to face him. I've been preparing for 20 years. For drought, for storms, for rustlers, for death. I'm tired of preparing. I want to live. Even if living is dangerous. Especially then. Safe is just another word for dead. He kissed her, then deep and possessive. You're remarkable. I'm a fool. That too. She laughed against his mouth. Sweet talker. Only with you. Liar. Only with you? He repeated, serious now. I haven't wanted to sweet talk anyone in 5 years. Haven't wanted to stay anywhere, build anything, hope for anything. You changed that. In 4 days. In 4 minutes. The moment you decided to trust me, bleeding stranger that I was. You could have left me to die. Should have, probably. I couldn't. Why not? Clara thought about it. Because I saw something in your eyes. Recognition, maybe, like you were as lost as I was, just in a different way. And now we're lost together. Is that better? Ask me in a week. But even as she said it, both knew a week was optimistic. The outside world was already pressing in the marshal's suspicions, the town's gossip, the shadow of the Colton gang. Their bubble of isolation couldn't hold. As if reading her thoughts, Luke said, "We need a plan." For what? For when they come. Because they will come, Clara. Jesse won't let my betrayal stand, and Briggs won't give up on connecting me to that robbery. Then we'll be ready. You don't understand what you're signing up for. Then explain it to me. Luke sat up, ran his hands through his hair. In the lamplight, the scars on his body told stories of violence Clara could only imagine. The Colton gang doesn't just kill enemies, they make examples of them. Jesse especially, he's got a cruel streak a mile wide. If he comes here and finds you with me, he'll what kill me. I've been ready to die for 20 years. There are worse things than death. Yes, Clara agreed. There's living without really being alive. I've done that. I won't do it again. Clara. No. She sat up too, faced him squarely. You don't get to decide for me. You don't get to protect me by leaving. We make decisions together or not at all. Even if those decisions get you killed. Even then. He studied her face, looking for doubt, fear, anything that might give him an excuse to leave for her own good. But Clara had made her choice, and her resolve was steel. All right, he said finally. Together. Together. They sealed it with a kiss that turned into more passion rising like a tide. This time their lovemaking was almost fierce, each trying to imprint themselves on the other, to create memories strong enough to sustain them through whatever came next. Much later, as Clara dozed in Luke's arms, she heard him whisper, "I love you." She kept her breathing even, pretending to be asleep. It was too soon for such words, too dangerous. But her traitorous heart sang with joy anyway, because despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the impossibility of it all, she was beginning to love him too. The next morning brought clouds again unusual for the desert, and the smell of rain on the wind. Clara woke to find Luke already up dressed, standing at the window with a tension in his shoulders that made her stomach clench. What is it? Riders coming, 3 of them. Clara's blood turned to ice as she scrambled from the bed, reaching for her clothes. Her hands shook as she dressed, mind racing through possibilities. The marshal returning with more questions. Jesse, Colton come for revenge, just travelers seeking water. Can you see who they are? She asked, pinning up her hair with swift, practiced movements. Luke squinted through the window, his body coiled tight as a spring. Not yet. They're taking their time staying spread out. That's not a good sign. Clara retrieved Thomas's shotgun from its place by the door, checked that it was loaded. Could be nothing. Could be cowboys looking for work. Could be. But his tone said he didn't believe it any more than she did. They waited in tense silence as the riders approached. When they were close enough to make out details, Luke cursed under his breath. Jesse, he said. The one in the middle with the black hat. That's Jesse Colton. Clara's mouth went dry. The others... Ben Martinez on the left. We called him Benny the Knife for obvious reasons. The other one? Damn, that's Tom. Tom Colton. I thought you said he wasn't at the robbery. He wasn't, but blood calls to blood. Luke turned from the window, gripped her shoulders. Clara, listen to me. Whatever happens, whatever they say or do, don't try to protect me. These men are killers. So are you. No, I've killed, but I'm not a killer. There's a difference, and you're looking at it right now through that window. The rider stopped at the gate, making no move to dismount. It was a power play, Clara realized, making them come out, making them react. Stay inside, Luke said. Like hell. Clara, this is my land, my home. I face threats to it head on. Before he could argue further, she walked onto the porch, shotgun visible, but not quite aimed. Luke followed, positioning himself slightly in front of her. Gentlemen, Clara called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Can I help you? Tom Colton, older than Jesse, but with the same cruel eyes, smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Well, Luke, you've been keeping interesting company. Tom, Luke said simply. That's all, just Tom. No good to see you, or how have you been, brother? We're not brothers anymore. No. Tom agreed, his smile fading. No, we're not. Brothers don't betray each other. Brothers don't put knives in each other's kin. Jesse shifted in his saddle, and Claire could see the bulk of bandages under his shirt where Luke had wounded him. His eyes, when they fixed on Luke, burned with hatred. Ma'am, Tom addressed Clara with mock courtesy. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Tom Colton. This here's my brother Jesse and our associate Ben Martinez. I know who you are, Clara said. What I don't know is why you're on my property. Who just came to collect something that belongs to us. Nothing here belongs to you. Tom's eyebrows rose. That's so, even old Luke there. Because see, he owes us a debt. Man rides with us for 5 years, shares our food, our dangers, our profits, then just walks away. That don't sit right. I paid my debts, Luke said. Every job I did, every risk I took, we're square. We're square? Jesse spoke, for the first time, his voice rough. Until you put a knife in me. Until you chose strangers over family. You were going to kill that girl. So, she wasn't nothing to you. She was 16 years old. She was a banker's daughter. Her kind have been bleeding folks like us dry for generations. That doesn't make her guilty of anything except being born. Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. Listen to you, gone all noble and righteous. This woman's influence, I'm guessing. He looked Clara up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. She must be something special to make you forget who you really are. I know exactly who I am, Luke said. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a man playing house with a dried-up widow, pretending you can wash the blood off your hands with domestic bliss. Clara felt the insult like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse, survived worse. Careful, Tom, Luke warned, his voice low and dangerous. Or what? You'll betray me too. You'll put a knife in my shoulder like you did Jesse. Tom leaned forward in his saddle. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with us, right now. No arguments, no heroics. No. No. Tom's eyebrows rose. That's not an option, brother. I'm not your brother, and I'm not going anywhere with you. Ben Martinez, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. Then we burn the place. The house, the barn, everything, with her in it, if necessary. Clara's finger found the trigger of the shotgun. You can try. Tom smiled again, that cold expression that never reached his eyes. Lady's got spine. I can see the appeal, Luke, really I can. But spine don't stop bullets, and it sure don't stop fire. You touch her or this place, and I'll kill you all, Luke said simply. Not a threat, just a statement of fact. You can try, Tom echoed Clara's words. But there's 3 of us, and 1 of you. 2, Clara corrected. And this is my land. I know every rock, every bush, every sight line. You want to fight, I'll give you one. Jesse laughed an ugly sound. Listen to her, Tom. She thinks she's tough. I don't think anything, Clara said. I know I'm a woman who survived 20 years alone in this desert. I've killed rattlers, coyotes, and men who thought I was an easy target. You want to add your names to that list, you're welcome to try. Tom studied her with new interest. You've got sand, I'll give you that. But this ain't your fight, ma'am. This is between us and Luke. The moment you rode onto my property, it became my fight. Clara, Luke said quietly, not taking his eyes off the riders. Go inside. No. Clara. I said no. Tom laughed again. She don't listen too good, does she? Luke, that must be frustrating for a man used to giving orders. I don't give her orders, Luke said. She's not mine to command. No, then what is she? Luke was quiet for a moment, then, she's my choice. My future if she'll have me. The words hung in the air, a declaration that changed everything. Clara's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral, the shotgun steady in her hands. Tom's face darkened. Your future. You think you get a future after what you've done. Everyone gets a future, Tom. They just have to be brave enough to take it. Brave, Jesse spit in the dirt. You call running off with some old widow brave. This time it was Luke who moved so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Jesse's horse by the bridle, nearly pulling the younger man from his saddle. "Call her that again?" Luke said, his voice deadly quiet. "I dare you." Jesse went for his gun, but Tom's sharp command stopped him. "Don't. Not yet." Luke released, the horse stepped back, but the threat of violence hung in the air like smoke. "Here's my offer," Tom said, his casual tone at odds with the tension. "You come with us now, peaceful-like, and we leave the lady and her property alone. You refuse, and things get ugly. Real ugly." "I've seen your version of ugly," Luke said. "I'm not impressed." "You haven't seen nothing yet." "Neither have you." They stared at each other, two men who'd once been close as brothers, now separated by an unbridgeable gulf. Clara could see the history between them, the shared experiences, the betrayal that cut both ways. "I'll give you until sundown to think about it," Tom said finally. "You come to the old Miller place, you know where that is, or we come back here with more men. And Luke, we won't be talking next time." "Tom," Luke called as they turned to leave, "it doesn't have to be this way." Tom looked back, and for just a moment Clara saw something almost like regret in his eyes. "Yeah, it does. You made your choice when you put blood before brotherhood. Now live with it, or die with it." They rode off, leaving dust and dread in their wake. Clara and Luke stood frozen on the porch until the riders disappeared over the horizon. "The Miller place," Clara said. "That's the abandoned ranch about 10 miles north." "You know it. Everyone knows it. Family was killed by Apaches 15 years ago. Nobody's lived there since." Luke nodded, his mind clearly working through possibilities. "It's isolated, no witnesses. You're not actually considering going—" He turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her stomach drop. "Clara." "No, don't you dare. Don't you dare make some noble sacrifice to protect me." "It's not noble. It's practical. If I don't go, they'll come back with more men. They'll burn you out or worse. Then we fight. We can't win that fight. We can't win the other one either. You go with them, you're dead." "Maybe, maybe not. Tom's sentimental. He might nothing. You betrayed them. In their world, that's a death sentence." Luke gripped her shoulders, pulled her close. "In their world, involving a woman in gang business is also a death sentence. For the woman, I involved myself. That won't matter to them." Clara pulled away, paced to the edge of the porch. Her mind raced through options, none of them good. "We could run, both of us. Leave now, head for California or Oregon. And leave everything you've built here, your land, your home, Thomas's grave. Things can be rebuilt. Dead is dead. You do that, leave everything for a man you've known 5 days." She turned to face him. "I'd do it for a chance at living instead of just surviving. But Luke, if we run, they'll follow. You know that." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll let us go if we leave the territory." "You don't believe that?" "No," he admitted. "I don't." They stood there, caught between impossible choices. Fight and likely die. Run and definitely be pursued. Surrender and certainly die. "There's another option," Clara said slowly. "What's that?" "We send for the marshal." Luke laughed bitterly. "Briggs? He'd arrest me alongside them." "Maybe. Or maybe he'd see a chance to take down the Colton gang. That's a bigger prize than one former member. It's a risk." "Everything's a risk, but at least with the law involved, there's a chance at justice instead of just vengeance." Well, Luke considered this. "Briggs won't come just on our word. He needs evidence, something concrete." "Then we get it. Tom gave us until sundown. That's 8 hours. Enough time to ride to town, send a telegram, maybe get help." "Clara, even if Briggs comes, even if he arrests them all, I'll likely hang alongside them. My past, your past is the past. You've been trying to change to be better. That has to count for something." "In my experience, it doesn't." Clara moved to him, took his face in her hands. "Then we change your experience. We fight for the future we want instead of accepting the past we're given." He covered her hands with his, and she could see the war in his eyes, hope battling cynicism, love fighting against fatalism. "I can't lose you," he said. "Not when I just found you." "Then don't. Stay. Fight. Choose us instead of them. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You said it yourself, we choose. So choose. He kissed her, then fierce and desperate, and Clara knew he'd made his decision even before he spoke. All right, we send for the marshal. But Clara, if this goes bad, it won't. But if it does, then at least we tried. At least we fought for something better than surrender. They moved quickly after that. Luke saddled Ace while Clara changed into her riding clothes, split skirt, sturdy boots, Thomas's old coat that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. She packed provisions, not sure how long they'd be gone or if they'd ever return. As she passed the photograph of Thomas still face down from the night before, she paused. I hope you understand, she whispered, then set it upright again. Thomas looked out at her from 25 years ago, young and stern and full of plans that would only partially come true. Outside, Luke was checking his gun, the one he'd retrieved from where he'd thrown it that first night. 6 bullets. Not much against the Colton gang, but better than nothing. Ready, get? He asked. One more thing. Clara went to the barn to a corner where the hay was piled highest. She moved several bales, revealing a wooden box hidden beneath. Inside was another gun, a Colt .45, and a leather pouch heavy with coins. Luke's eyebrows rose. Where did that come from? Thomas taught me to always have insurance. The gun was his father's. The money is everything I've saved for 20 years. Clara, that's your security. Security is an illusion. You taught me that. She loaded the Colt with practiced ease, tucked it into her belt. Besides, what good is money if we're dead? They mounted up Clara on Buttercup, who was old but steady Luke on Ace. As they rode away from the ranch, Clara looked back once at everything she'd built, everything she stood to lose. No regrets? Luke asked, watching her. None. For the first time in 20 years, none. The ride to town took 3 hours of hard traveling. They pushed the horses as much as they dared, aware of time slipping away like water through their fingers. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning clouds, and the desert showed its teeth, harsh, unforgiving, beautiful. They didn't talk much, saving their breath and their energy. But sometimes Clara would catch Luke looking at her with something like wonder, and she'd feel that same flutter in her stomach that she'd felt at 17 when Thomas first smiled at her. The town appeared like a mirage, a collection of wooden buildings that seemed too fragile to withstand the desert wind. It was busy for a weekday, wagons and horses crowding the main street. Clara felt the weight of eyes as they rode in, heard the whispers start. That's the widow Whitfield. Is that the outlaw with her, some bold as brass riding in together? Shameful is what it is. Clara kept her chin high, her eyes forward. Let them talk. She had bigger concerns than gossip. The telegraph office was next to the general store. Luke dismounted first, helped Clara down, even though she didn't need it. The gesture was protective, possessive, a clear statement to anyone watching. Inside the telegraph operator, a thin man named Walter looked up with poorly concealed curiosity. Mrs. Whitfield, don't often see you in town. I need to send a telegram. Urgent. Of course. He pushed paper and pencil toward her. You know the rates. Clara wrote quickly, her message brief but clear. Marshal Briggs, Colton gang at Miller Place sundown today. Come armed. See Whitfield. Walter read it, his eyes widening. Mrs. Whitfield, are you sure? Send it now. Yes, ma'am. As Walter tapped out the message, Luke stood by the window watching the street. We've got company. Clara looked out to see Jake Morrison approaching, his face creased with concern. He entered without knocking, took in the scene with a glance. Clara, what are you doing? What I have to. The whole town's talking, riding in with him bold as you please. Jake, I don't have time for lectures. The Colton gang is here. They've threatened my ranch. Jake's face paled. The Coltons. Clara, you need to get out of town. Hell, get out of the territory. I'm not running. Then you're a fool. Maybe, but I'm a fool who's tired of being afraid. Walter finished sending the message. It's sent, though whether the marshal will come. He'll come, Luke said. Briggs wants the Coltons bad enough to risk it. And he wants you too, Jake pointed out. This could be walking into a trap. Everything could be a trap. At least this one's of our own making. They left the telegraph office to find a small crowd had gathered. Some faces were curious, others hostile. Clara recognized most of them people she'd bought supplies from sold eggs to nodded at in passing for 20 years. Mrs. Whitfield. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with pretensions of importance, stepped forward. I think we need to talk. Not now, Mayor. Yes, now. You're causing quite a stir associating with this gentleman. The pause before gentleman was deliberate and insulting. My associations are my business. Not when they bring danger to our town. We know who he is, what he was, the Colton gang. Is already here, Clara interrupted. They came to my ranch this morning, so if you want to worry about danger, worry about that. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, fear replacing judgment in many faces. All the more reason for him to leave, someone called out. He brought them here. They'd have come anyway, Luke said. Men like the Coltons don't need much excuse for violence. But you gave them one, Mayor Thompson said, and now you're putting all of us at risk. We're handling it, Clara said. How by sending for one marshal against the whole gang? By standing up instead of cowering, by fighting back instead of hoping they'll pass us by. Easy for you to say. You live outside town. We're the ones who'll pay if this goes wrong. Clara felt her temper flare. I've lived outside town for 20 years defending my land alone. Never once did any of you offer help. Never once did you check to see if I was alive or dead except when you wanted eggs or vegetables. So don't talk to me about putting you at risk. I've been at risk every day for 2 decades. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some had the grace to look ashamed. That's different, Mayor Thompson said weakly. Is it just that now the danger has a face and a name? Before anyone could answer, they heard horses. Lots of them. Everyone tensed hands, moving to weapons, but it was Marshal Briggs and 6 deputies riding hard from the south. Well, well, Briggs said, dismounting in front of Clara. When I got your telegram, I thought it might be a trap. But here you are, pretty as you please, right out in the open. Marshal, Clara said. Thank you for coming. Don't thank me yet. He looked at Luke. You ready to turn yourself in? I'm ready to help you get the Colton gang if that's what you mean. That's not exactly what I mean. Marshal, Clara said, we don't have time for this. They gave us until sundown. That's less than 4 hours. Briggs studied them both, calculation in his eyes. Tell me everything. And I mean everything. They retreated to the marshal's office, where Clara and Luke laid out the morning's confrontation. Briggs listened without interrupting, though his expression grew increasingly grim. 3 of them, you say? Tom and Jesse Colton, Ben Martinez. Luke confirmed. That's not the whole gang. No. Tom said they'd bring more if I didn't come. How many more? Could be 3, could be 10. Depends on how many are still riding with them. Briggs stood paced to the window. The Miller place is defensible, but isolated. If this goes bad, no one's coming to help. Then we make sure it doesn't go bad, Clara said. Briggs turned to her. Ma'am, you're not going anywhere near this. The hell I'm not. This is my fight too. This is law business. This is my business. They threaten my home, my life. I have every right to defend both. You have no idea what you're walking into. I have some idea, Luke said quietly. And she's right. She has a right to be there. Briggs looked between them, frustration clear on his face. You 2 are going to get yourselves killed. Maybe, Clara said, but at least we'll die fighting for something instead of from something. The marshal sighed. Fine, but we do this my way, by the book. I want the Coltons alive if possible. Tom, maybe, Luke said. Jesse won't come quiet. Then Jesse gets what Jesse earns. Briggs turned to his deputies. Get ready, boys. We ride in an hour. As the deputies prepared, Clara and Luke found themselves alone for a moment behind the marshal's office. You don't have to do this, Luke said. You could stay here, wait. We've been through this. Clara, if something happens to you because of me. She kissed him, cutting off his words. Something already happened to me because of you. I came alive again. That's worth any risk. You're impossible. You're just figuring that out. He laughed, pulled her close. I love you. There it was in daylight. This time, no pretense of sleep to hide behind. Clara's heart raced, but she made herself meet his eyes. I know. That's all just I know. For now, ask me again when this is over. Is that a promise? It's a possibility. It would have to be enough. The ride to the Miller place felt both eternal and too quick. 7 deputies, 1 federal marshal, 1 former outlaw, and 1 stubborn widow against however many killers the Coltons had assembled. Not the best odds, but not the worst either. The abandoned ranch came into view as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was a sad place, broken windows, sagging roof, the bones of what had once been someone's dream scattered across the desert. There, one of the deputies pointed, horses tied behind the ruined barn. Clara counted 8, maybe 9. More than we thought, Briggs said. Not more than we can handle, Luke replied. That's to be determined. The marshal studied the layout. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was simple. Surround the building, call for surrender, take whoever came out. If they fought, fight back. If they ran, pursue. Clean legal by the book, but plans rarely survived first contact with reality. They spread out, approaching from multiple angles. Clara stayed with Luke despite Briggs's protests. She'd earned this much, at least the right to face danger beside the man she'd chosen. The sun was almost touching the horizon when they got into position. The old ranch house stood silent, no sign of movement, but Clara could feel eyes watching from the broken windows. Tom Colton, Briggs called out. This is Federal Marshal John Briggs. You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up. Silence. Tom, you've got 30 seconds before we come in shooting. A laugh from inside. Tom's voice. That you, Luke, hiding behind the law now. Just trying to keep everyone alive, Tom. Bit late for that. Tom appeared in the doorway, hands visible but not raised. You brought the law to a family matter. That's another betrayal. This stopped being a family matter when you threatened an innocent woman. Innocent? Tom laughed again. Brother, there's no such thing as innocent. Everyone's guilty of something. Maybe, but some of us try to be better. And some of us accept what we are. Tom stepped onto the ruined porch. Here's the thing, Marshal. You can take me in, maybe even get me to trial. But my boys in there, they're not coming quiet. Blood will spill. The question is who's... That's your choice, Colton. No, it's Luke's choice. He started this when he put a knife in my brother. Your brother was going to kill a child. So you keep saying, but Jesse tells it different. Jesse's a liar. That brought Jesse out, gun already drawn. Say that again. Multiple guns swung toward him, but Tom raised a hand. Not yet, brother. Not yet. He looked at Luke. One more chance. You come with us, everyone else goes home. No blood except yours. You know I can't do that. Can't or won't. Both. Tom sighed. Then I guess we do this the hard way. It happened fast. Jesse's gun swung toward Luke. Luke pushed Clara down, drew his own weapon. Gunfire erupted from everywhere at once, the house, the lawmen echoing across the desert like thunder. Clara found herself on the ground, Luke's body shielding hers, the Colt in her hand, though she didn't remember drawing it. She could hear shouting, screaming, the terrible sound of bullets hitting flesh. Stay down, Luke shouted. Then he was up and moving, firing at shapes and windows. Clara saw Jesse taking aim at Luke's back. Without thinking, she raised the Colt and fired. The kick knocked her backward, but her aim was true. Jesse spun, clutched his shoulder, his gun falling from nerveless fingers. Then Ben Martinez was there, knife in hand, coming for her. Clara tried to swing the gun around, but he was too fast, too close. The knife descended, and Luke was there catching Ben's wrist, the two men grappling in the dust. Clara scrambled back, looking for a clear shot, but they were moving too fast. A gunshot close. Ben stiffened, fell. Luke stood over him, smoking gun in hand, blood spreading from a gash on his arm where the knife had found its mark. Clara, are you? Another shot. Luke jerked, stumbled. Blood bloomed across his shirt, not the old wound, but a new one higher up, dangerously close to his heart. No! Clara caught him as he fell, her hands immediately going to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding that came too fast, too red. Tom Colton stood 20 feet away, smoking gun in hand, tears streaming down his face. You chose them over us. Over family. Marshal Briggs shot him before he could fire again. Tom crumpled his gun, falling from lifeless fingers. Then it was over. The sudden silence was deafening after the chaos. Clara was vaguely aware of deputies moving checking bodies, but all she could focus on was Luke's face growing paler by the second. "Hey," he said, trying to smile. "You okay?" "Don't talk. Save your strength." "Clara, don't you dare. Don't you dare die on me now." "Not. I'm not planning to, but just in case." "No, there's no just in case. You're going to be fine." But they both knew better. The wound was bad, the blood loss worse. They were miles from town from a doctor from help. "I love you," he whispered. "I know." "Say it back, please, just once." Clara's tears fell on his face as she leaned close. "I love you too. I've loved you since you bled on my porch and made me feel alive again." He smiled, then real and warm despite the pain. "Worth it, all of it. Worth it to hear that. Stop talking like you're dying." "Okay." But his eyes were fluttering closed. "Luke. Luke?" Marshal Briggs was there, pressing cloth to the wound, barking orders at his deputies. "Get a wagon. Now, we need to get him to town." The next hour was a blur. The frantic ride back to town, Clara holding Luke's unconscious form, trying to keep pressure on the wound while the wagon bounced over rough ground, his breathing growing shallower, his pulse weakening under her fingers. The doctor, old Doc Harrison, who'd delivered both her dead babies, working with grim efficiency. "It's bad. The bullet's still in there close to the lung. I can try to get it out, but what? But he might not survive the surgery. He's lost a lot of blood. And if you don't try, he'll definitely die." "Then try." The waiting was agony. Clara paced the doctor's front room, still wearing Luke's blood on her dress, aware of the crowd gathering outside. News traveled fast. The Colton gang was finished, 3 dead, including Tom. 3 captured, including Jesse. Luke Carver, former outlaw turned hero, was fighting for his life. And Clara Whitfield, the dried-up widow who'd lived alone for 20 years, was revealed to be neither dried up nor alone. Jake Morrison brought her coffee she didn't drink, sat with her in silence that she appreciated. Marshal Briggs came and went, dealing with the aftermath, the paperwork, the questions. "You saved my life," he told Clara at one point. "That shot you took at Jesse, he'd have had me if not for that. I wasn't thinking about you." "I know, you were thinking about him." Briggs studied her. "He's lucky to have you. If he lives?" "He'll live. Men like that are too stubborn to die." But as the hours dragged on, Clara's hope faded. The doctor emerged once, shaking his head. "I got the bullet out, but he's weak, very weak. The next few hours will tell." "Can I see him?" "He's unconscious." "I don't care." Luke looked small in the bed, pale as the sheets, his chest barely rising and falling. Clara took his hand, felt how cold it was, and began to talk. She told him about her plans for the ranch, about the improvements they could make together. She told him about the children they wouldn't have, but the life they could build anyway. She told him about the sunrise she wanted to watch with him, the storms they'd weather, the quiet evenings on the porch, growing old together. "You don't get to leave," she whispered fiercely. "You don't get to make me love you and then die. That's not how this story ends." His hand twitched in hers, the smallest movement, but she felt it like lightning. "Luke." His eyes fluttered open, focused on her with obvious effort. "Clara, I'm here. Did we win?" "We won." "Good." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Tired." "Then rest, but you come back to me, you hear? You come back." He smiled slightly. "Yes, ma'am." The fever came that night, burning through Luke's body like wildfire through dry grass. Clara bathed his face with cool cloths, whispered prayers she hadn't said in 20 years, and refused to leave his side despite Doc Harrison's attempts to make her rest. "You won't do him any good if you collapse," the doctor said gently. "I won't do him any good anywhere else either," Clara replied, wringing out another cloth. The town that had whispered about her just hours before now seemed to hold its breath. People brought food she didn't eat, offered help she didn't need, spoke words of comfort she didn't hear. All that mattered was the labored rise and fall of Luke's chest, the heat radiating from his skin the way he sometimes called out names in his delirium, Mary Sarah, and most often Clara. On the second night, Marshal Briggs came to see her. He looked older somehow, worn down by the violence and its aftermath. "Jesse Colton wants to make a deal," he said. "What kind of deal?" "Information about the gang's hideouts where they stashed stolen money in exchange for a reduced sentence. And he wants to see Luke." Claire's exhaustion flared into anger. "Absolutely not. He says he has something to say, something Luke needs to hear. Luke needs to heal. That's all he needs." Briggs studied her face. "You've changed. Few days ago, you were just the widow Whitfield keeping to herself nobody's business but her own. Now look at you. Now look at me, what? Now you're fighting for something. Someone. It suits you." Clara turned back to Luke, adjusting the blanket, though it didn't need adjusting. "People change when they have a reason to. He gave you that reason. He reminded me I was still capable of change. That's gift enough." Briggs stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I was wrong about him, about you both. Man who'd risk his life to save a girl he didn't know. Woman who'd face down the Colton gang for a man she'd known less than a week. Those are people worth knowing." After he left, Clara found herself thinking about Jesse's request. What could he possibly have to say that Luke needed to hear? But looking at Luke's still form, his fever-flushed face, she knew it didn't matter. Nothing Jesse could say was worth risking Luke's fragile hold on life. The fever broke just before dawn on the third day. Clara woke from an exhausted doze in the chair beside his bed to find Luke watching her with clear eyes for the first time in days. "You look terrible," he whispered, voice rough from disuse. Clara laughed through sudden tears. "You sweet talker." "How long?" 3 days. You've been fighting fever infection. Doc Harrison said." She stopped, unwilling to voice how close he'd come. "But I'm still here." "You're still here." She took his hand, brought it to her lips. "You kept your promise." "Did I? I don't remember much after Tom shot you. He's dead, Luke. Briggs killed him." Something shifted in Luke's expression. Grief, relief, regret, all mingled together. "And Jesse?" "Captured, along with 2 others. The gang's finished." Luke closed his eyes. "All those years, all that history, gone. Are you sorry?" "No. Maybe. I don't know." He looked at her again. "They were family once, even if it was twisted. You can mourn the loss of something that needed to end." Clara understood. She'd mourned her marriage even while being grateful it had given her strength she didn't know she possessed. Doc Harrison's arrival interrupted her thoughts. He examined Luke with professional efficiency, then stepped back with a satisfied nod. "The crisis has passed. You're lucky, Mr. Carver. Another inch to the left, and we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Luke said, his eyes on Clara. "I had someone worth living for." The doctor cleared his throat. "Yes, well, you'll need to stay here at least another week. Then light activity only for a month. That means no riding, no heavy lifting, no strenuous activity of any kind." The meaningful look he gave them both made Clara blush like a schoolgirl. After he left, Luke tried to sit up, grimacing at the pain the movement caused. Clara immediately pushed him back down. "Don't you dare. I'm fine." "You were shot. You nearly died. You're not fine." "Clara, we need to talk about what happens now. Now you rest. You heal. Everything else can wait." "Can it?" "The marshal knows who I am, what I was. The town knows. Your reputation." "My reputation is my concern." "Clara." "No." She stood pacing to the window. Outside, the town was waking up, people going about their business as if the world hadn't nearly ended 3 days ago. "Do you know what Jake Morrison told me while you were dying? He said the whole town's talking, but not the way I expected. They're calling you a hero. The man who stood up to the Colton gang, who saved that girl in Tucson, who protected the widow Whitfield." "I'm no hero." "No, you're not. You're better than that. You're a man who made mistakes and is trying to make amends. That's harder than being a hero." Luke was quiet for a moment. "And what are they saying about you?" "That I'm a fool for love." She turned to face him. "They're not wrong." Clara, I love you. Luke Carver, I said it when you were dying, and I'll say it now that you're living. I love you despite your past, despite the danger you brought to my door, despite the fact that you make me feel too much when feeling nothing was safer. Come here. She went to him, sat carefully on the edge of the bed. He reached up with his good arm, cupped her face. I love you too. But love isn't enough if it ruins your life. My life was already ruined. 20 years of emptiness that's ruined. You gave me something else. Hope, maybe. Or just the reminder that I could still feel hope. I'm not sure I can be what you need. I don't need you to be anything but what you are. A man trying to be better than he was. That's enough. He pulled her down for a kiss, gentle and sweet. When they parted, both were breathing harder. The doctor said no strenuous activity, Clara reminded him. For a month. You'll never last that long. Is that a challenge? It's a promise. Over the next week, as Luke slowly regained his strength, the town's attitude toward them shifted from scandal to acceptance. Maybe it was the way Clara never left his side, or the way Luke looked at her like she hung the moon, or simply that everyone loves a redemption story. Whatever the reason, when Luke was finally able to leave the doctor's house, they found the townspeople surprisingly welcoming. Mr. Carver. Mayor Thompson approached them on the street. I owe you an apology, and you as well, Mrs. Whitfield. I misjudged the situation. No apology needed, Luke said, though Clara could feel the tension in him. Nevertheless, you have it. The town council has met, and we'd like to offer you a position. Deputy sheriff, if you're interested. The pay's not much, but it's honest work. Luke's surprise was evident. You want to make me a lawman? Knowing what I was, sometimes the best lawmen are those who've seen both sides of the law. Marshal Briggs recommended you said you'd be wasted as anything else. Clara felt Luke's hesitation and spoke up. He needs time to consider. He's still recovering. Of course, the offer stands whenever you're ready. As they walked slowly toward the hotel where Clara had taken a room, Luke was quiet. You're thinking too loud, Clara said, echoing his words from days before. Deputy Sheriff, can you imagine? Yes, actually, you'd be good at it. Clara, I was an outlaw. Was. Past tense. And now you have a chance to be something else. In town. That would mean living in town. Clara's heart sank a little, but she kept her voice steady. If that's what you want. Luke stopped walking, turned to face her. What I want is to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Town or ranch, I don't care as long as you're there. Luke, marry me. The words hung in the air between them, unexpected and perfect. You're delirious. The fever addled your brain. My brain's fine. It's my heart that's addled, has been since you pointed that shotgun at me and demanded to know my business. He took her hands. Marry me, Clara. Let me try to make you happy. I'm already happy. Then let me try to keep you that way. Clara thought of all the reasons to say no. The age difference, his past, the uncertainty of the future. But stronger than all of that was the simple truth that she loved him, and he loved her, and sometimes that was enough. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you, you impossible man. He kissed her there on Main Street in full view of anyone watching, and Clara didn't care. Let them see. Let them know that the widow Whitfield was a widow no more. They were married a month later, as soon as Luke could stand through a ceremony without exhaustion. It was a simple affair. Jake Morrison stood as witness. Marshal Briggs gave Clara away, and Doc Harrison's wife played the organ. The church was fuller than Clara expected. Curiosity bringing out people who'd barely acknowledged her existence for 20 years. She wore her best dress, a deep blue that brought out her eyes, and Luke looked handsome despite still being too thin from his recovery. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Clara half expected Jesse Colton to burst through the doors, but there was only silence and then the words that made it official. You may kiss your bride. This kiss was different from all the others. It was a promise, a seal, a beginning. When they parted, Clara saw tears in Luke's eyes. Happy tears, he whispered. Better be. The reception was held at the hotel paid for by the town council as what Mayor Thompson called an investment in community healing. Clara suspected it was more about satisfying everyone's curiosity, but she didn't care. She was too happy to care about anything except the ring on her finger and the man beside her. "Dance with me," Luke said as someone started playing a fiddle. "You're not supposed to exert yourself." "Woman, I just promised to love and cherish you till death. I think I can manage one dance." They moved slowly, carefully, Luke's arm around her waist, her hand in his. Around them, other couples joined in, and for a moment Clara felt part of something larger than herself, larger than her isolated ranch and years of solitude. "Regrets?" Luke asked. "None. You... Only that it took getting shot to get you to admit you loved me. I'm stubborn that way. I noticed." The party continued late into the evening, but Luke's energy was fading. Claire could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way he favored his wounded side. "Time to go," she said. "I'm fine. You're exhausted, and we have a long ride tomorrow." They were returning to the ranch despite the job offer in town. Luke had turned it down, saying he'd rather be a rancher than a lawman. "I've had enough of guns and violence," he'd said. "I want to build something instead of enforcing something." But Claire suspected the real reason was that he knew how much the ranch meant to her, how her roots went too deep to transplant. They spent their wedding night at the hotel, Luke too tired for anything more than holding each other. But that was enough. After so many nights alone, just having his warmth beside her felt like a miracle. "I have a wedding gift for you," he said in the darkness. "Luke, you didn't need to... It's not what you think." He reached over to the nightstand, pulled out an envelope. "Open it." Inside was a deed. Clara held it up to the moonlight from the window, reading slowly. It was for the Miller place, the abandoned ranch where the shootout had happened. "Luke, how... Turns out the family that owned it had no heirs. It's been sitting in probate for years. Marshal Briggs pulled some strings, said it was the least the government could do after what we went through. It's ours if we want it. But it's destroyed. It can be rebuilt. Together. Your land and this would give us almost 1,000 acres. Enough to build something real, something lasting." Clara set the deed aside, turned to face him. "You want to rebuild the place where you almost died. I want to turn something ugly into something beautiful. Take a place of violence and make it peaceful. Seems fitting, doesn't it? It seems like a lot of work. Good thing I'm marrying a woman who's not afraid of work." She kissed him gently, mindful of his wounds. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing a future I'd stopped believing in." The next morning they loaded their few belongings onto the wagon and headed home. The ride was slow, Luke still not fully healed, but Clara didn't mind. She'd been rushing for 20 years, rushing to survive, rushing through days that all looked the same. Now she had a reason to slow down, to savor. The ranch looked exactly as they'd left it, except for one thing. There were flowers on the porch, wildflowers in a mason jar with a note from Jake Morrison. "Welcome home." "Home," Luke said, testing the word. "Is it?" Clara asked. "Does it feel like home to you?" "You feel like home. The rest is just details." They settled into a routine over the following weeks. Luke couldn't do heavy work yet, but he could plan, and he had grand visions for their combined land. A larger house where the Miller place stood. A proper barn. Maybe even hired hands eventually. "You're dreaming too big," Clara said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and red. "Maybe, but isn't it nice to have dreams again?" It was. For 20 years, Clara's only dream had been making it through another day. Now she found herself thinking about next year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. "I want to plant trees," she said suddenly. "Trees. Real trees. Not just mesquite and scrub. Something that will grow tall and give shade. Something that will outlive us. Legacy trees. Is that foolish? No more foolish than a former outlaw thinking he could win the heart of the strongest woman in Arizona. Flatterer. It's not flattery if it's true." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined as the stars began to appear. The desert that had once seemed so empty to Clara now felt full of possibility. "Luke? What would you have done if I'd said no to marriage, I mean?" He squeezed her hand. "Kept asking until you said yes." "And if I never did?" Then I'd have been the most devoted ranch hand in the territory, working for room and board and the chance to see you every day. That would have been enough. After 5 years of nothing, anything with you would have been enough. Clara turned to look at him. In the fading light, she could see the scar from his wound, the lines that pain and loss had carved into his face. But she could also see peace there, a settling that matched her own. Do you think they're watching Mary and Sarah Thomas? Luke considered. I don't know. I hope so. I hope they see that we're not replacing them, just carrying on, taking the love they gave us and giving it new life. That's a beautiful thought. I have my moments, few and far between. Good thing I have a lifetime to work on it. A lifetime. The word that had once felt like a prison sentence now felt like a promise. The next day brought unexpected visitors. Claire was feeding the chickens when she heard horses approaching. Luke emerged from the barn, hand automatically going to where his gun used to be, old habits dying hard. But it was Marshal Briggs with only one deputy, and their manner was relaxed. Marshal, Luke greeted him warily. Carver, Mrs. Carver. He tipped his hat to Clara. Congratulations on the marriage. Thank you. What brings you out here? Couple things. First, Jesse Colton was sentenced yesterday. Life in prison, no possibility of parole. Luke's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. He wanted me to give you a message. I don't want to hear it. I think you do. Briggs dismounted, pulled out a piece of paper. He wrote it down, said to read it exact. Luke took the paper, reluctantly read it silently. Clara watched his face change surprise, then something that might have been forgiveness. What does it say? She asked. Luke handed her the paper. In rough handwriting it read, Luke, I hated you for choosing them over us, but Tom's dead because he couldn't let go and I'm in prison because I couldn't either. Maybe you were right to get out. Maybe we should have gone with you when you left 5 years ago. The girl in Tucson, I wasn't really going to shoot her. I just wanted you to choose. You chose right. Don't know if that makes us square, but it's all I got. Jesse. Do you believe him? Clara asked. About the girl. I don't know. Maybe. Jesse was always more talk than action until Tom pushed him. It doesn't change what happened. No, but it helps. Somehow. Briggs cleared his throat. The other reason I'm here is to let you know there's reward money for helping capture the Colton gang. We don't want blood money, Clara said quickly. It's not blood money. It's justice money. $500. Enough to help rebuild that second ranch, I'd think. Luke and Clara exchanged glances. $500 was more than she'd saved in 20 years. Take it, Briggs said. You earned it, both of you. After he left, they stood in the yard staring at the bank draft that represented so much possibility. We could hire help, Luke said. Get the Miller place rebuilt before winter. We could buy those trees I wanted. We could do a lot of things. Together. Together. The word had become their touchstone, their promise, their prayer. Over the following months, they did rebuild. The Miller place was transformed from a monument to violence into a working ranch. They hired 2 young men who'd been displaced by the closing of a mine, good workers who didn't ask too many questions about Luke's past. Clara planted her trees cottonwoods that would grow tall and provide shade for generations to come. Luke built her a new chicken coop twice the size of the old one with a door that didn't stick and windows that actually closed. They worked side by side, sunup to sundown, building something neither had thought they'd have again a future. One evening, as summer gave way to fall, Clara found Luke standing by the 3 graves under the oak tree. She'd shown him where Thomas and the babies were buried, and sometimes she found him there paying respects to the family that had come before him. I was thanking them, he said when she joined him. For what? For taking care of you until I could find you. That's presumptuous. Maybe I was taking care of myself. You were. But everyone needs help sometimes. Clara leaned against him, careful of his side that still pained him sometimes. The hands are talking about building a school. A school. If more families move into the area, the territory's growing. Would you want that neighbor's community? I spent 20 years avoiding both, but maybe isolation isn't strength. Maybe it's just isolation. Luke kissed the top of her head. Look at you getting philosophical. It's your bad influence. I thought I was a good influence. The jury's still out. He laughed, the sound rich and warm in the cooling air. How long do I have to wait for a verdict? Oh, 40 or 50 years should do it. I can work with that. As they walked back to the house, their house now truly theirs, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. A wounded stranger on her doorstep, a choice to help, a greater choice to trust, the violence that had tested them, the love that had sustained them. Luke, yeah, I've been thinking about what you said about turning something ugly into something beautiful. And I think that's what we've done, not just with the Miller place, but with ourselves. We took all that loss and loneliness and turned it into this. She gestured at the land around them, the house they'd improved together, the life they were building. This chance, this choice, this future we're making. Luke stopped walking, turned her to face him. You know what I think? I think I'm exactly the right age to know the difference. Clara smiled, remembering her words from what felt like a lifetime ago. The difference between existing and living, between being safe and being happy, between a life sentence and a life worth living. And which do we have? All of the above. The good parts, anyway. That's a lot to claim. We've earned it. And they had. Through blood and tears, through choosing each other again and again, through building something from the ashes of their former lives. That night, as they lay in bed listening to coyotes sing to the desert moon, Clara thought about the woman she'd been just months before. Alone defended, convinced her life's main chapters were written. What are you thinking? Luke asked, his hand tracing lazy circles on her back. About time. How I thought I had too much of it before you came. How now there never seems to be enough. We've got years, Clara. God willing. Even God wouldn't dare separate us now. You'd probably argue with him until he gave in. Blasphemy. Truth. She laughed, the sound mixing with the night sounds of the desert wind through cottonwood saplings, the distant call of an owl, the settling of their house around them. I love you, she said, words that had once seemed impossible, now coming as easily as breathing. I love you too. Every stubborn, beautiful, impossible inch of you. That's a lot of inches these days. I think your cooking is making me fat. Perfect. More of you to love. Smooth talker. Only with you. Liar. Only with you, he repeated and kissed her to prove it. Outside the desert stretched endless under stars, harsh and beautiful in equal measure. But inside their small house, in their bed, that had known such loneliness and now knew such love, two people who thought their best days were behind them discovered that sometimes the best days were just beginning. Clara thought of the girl she'd been at 17 marrying Thomas for security and escape. She thought of the woman she'd been at 38 burying him and resigning herself to solitude. She thought of herself at 58 pointing a shotgun at a wounded stranger and making a choice that changed everything. You awake, Luke whispered. Yes. Good. I have something to tell you. What? Doc Harrison stopped by while you were at the well today. Clara tensed. Luke's wounds had healed, but she still worried about lingering damage. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, but he mentioned something interesting. The widow Martinez is selling her place, 20 acres on the other side of town, and he thought we might be interested. For the school. The school that doesn't exist yet. The school that could exist if someone built it. Clara sat up, looked down at him in the moonlight. You want to build a school. I want to build something for the children who'll come after us, the ones who'll sit under those cottonwood trees you planted, the ones who'll inherit this land we're healing. We can't have children, Luke. I'm too old. I know, but we can leave something for other people's children, something that says we were here, we survived, we built something good from something broken. Felt tears prick her eyes. This man with his violent past and gentle heart never ceased to surprise her. Yes, she said. Yes. Yes to the school. Yes to the legacy. Yes to all of it. He pulled her down for a kiss that led to more their bodies moving together with practiced ease, desire undiminished by familiarity. Later, as Clara dozed against Luke's shoulder, she heard him whisper something that sounded like a prayer. Thank you for sending me to her door. Thank you for giving me the courage to stay. Thank you for this second chance at life. Clara didn't tell him she was awake. Some moments were too precious to acknowledge, too perfect to disturb with words. The next morning brought rain, the kind of gentle soaking rain the desert needed but rarely got. They stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the earth drink deeply. It's going to be a good year, Luke said. How do you know it? I can feel it. The land's ready to give instead of just take. Like us. Like us. Clara leaned into him, this man who'd bled his way into her life and healed them both in the process. Luke, yeah. Thank you. For what? For being exactly the wrong man at exactly the right time. That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received. Get used to it. I plan on giving you 40 or 50 years of strange compliments. I can work with that. The rain continued washing the dust from the leaves of the new cottonwoods, filling the cisterns, promising growth and renewal. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the desert, but it was the kind that brought life, not destruction. Clara thought about the storms they'd weathered, literal and metaphorical. The violence that had brought them together and nearly torn them apart. The choice to trust, to love, to build something from the wreckage of their separate griefs. I used to hate storms, she said. And now I know they bring change. And sometimes change is exactly what we need. Luke set down his coffee, took her face in his hands. You changed me. Clara Whitfield Carver made me believe I could be more than my worst mistakes. You changed me too, made me believe I could be more than my losses. Then I guess we're even. I guess we are. They kissed there on the porch, rain misting around them, the desert blooming with possibility. When they parted, Clara saw their future stretched out before them. Not easy, never that, but full. Full of work and growth and the kind of love that came from choosing each other every day. Ready to start building that school? Luke asked. Ready to start building everything? Hand in hand, they walked into their rain-washed land, two people who'd found each other at what they'd thought was the end of their stories, only to discover it was just the beginning of a better one. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had taught them both about survival. But together they were learning something better: how to thrive. How to take the broken pieces of their lives and build something whole. How to turn loneliness into love, isolation into connection, mere existence into a life fully lived. And as the rain continued to fall, washing away the dust and bringing the desert to life, Clara knew with certainty that she was exactly the right age to know the difference between settling and choosing, between accepting fate and making it. She'd chosen Luke. He'd chosen her. And together they'd chosen to write a new story on the blank pages they'd thought were all they had left. It was, she thought, as Luke squeezed her hand and smiled at her through the rain, more than enough. It was everything.